And dry conditions in some parts of the country mean no fireworks for this 4th, but you can still celebrate at a national park. Coming up, some less crowded destinations that offer a great way to escape and get into the out there.
All right, happy Sunday, folks. Good morning to you and happy 4th of July. Welcome to America's Weekend Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten.
And I'm meteorologist Kelly Cass. We have a lot to get to on this holiday, but of course we've got Tropical Storm Elsa and the newest advisory coming in from the National Hurricane Center. Also, summer storms that could dampen your plans for fireworks. And then we have to talk about extreme heat that continues to dominate the West.
All right, let's go ahead and do it. Let's get to the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center right now with Tropical Storm Elsa. You're noticing this? Not a lot of change. If anything, its forward motion has dropped down by 1 mile per hour. So now we're down to 13 miles per hour, but Kelly's still moving towards the west-northwest, making a track towards Cuba.
Yeah, it's a little closer now to Jamaica, now 45 miles east of Kingston, Jamaica, where the winds will eventually pick up. So we'll be watching out for deteriorating conditions between Jamaica and Cuba throughout the day today. And those of you in Florida, we need to get ready for this storm too. Fort Myers, Naples, southwestern Florida on track for a pretty decent 4th of July today. We've got boatloads of sunshine and a high right around 90 degrees. But as always in Florida this time of the year, you can't rule out a pop-up shower or storm.
That's right. We actually have storms in northwestern Florida, too, as we go throughout the day today. Showers and thunderstorms pick up the pace Monday here. And by Monday evening, tropical storm conditions from Elsa are likely. They'll last through most of our Tuesday as well.
So as you're doing your shopping for the burgers, the dogs, bottled water, put that on your list. You know, some of those essentials that might come in handy. Make sure the flashlights have good batteries because there is a chance, even with 40 to 50 mile per hour winds, we could see some outages. For now, though, all the action along the Gulf Coast with a stalled out front. All
the action along the northern Gulf Coast. We've got rain and thunderstorms from New Orleans to Houston, Texas, and eastbound as well into a place like Tallahassee, Florida. But Kelly, overall, I think a lot of the country is really happy waking up this morning. Not a lot of clouds out there for a lot of you in places like Atlanta, into Arkansas, and also Tennessee as well.
New England, that feels more like Easter. That does not feel like Independence Day. Highs yesterday in Boston only got up to 60, and today we'll be in the mid-60s with still that rain hanging on to New England.
Some of that rain because of an upper-level low now starting to track towards the north and east. So cooler there for you in Caribou, Maine. 77 degrees for us today in a place like New York City. But look who is heating up today. OKC to 86 degrees in the northern high plains, Kelly, in the 90s. But let's talk about Elsa because the storm is racing through the Caribbean past Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Rough surf, heavy downpours, and blustery winds are the storm's calling cards. Elsa left significant destruction in Barbados, where 62 homes collapsed. The Associated Press reporting Elsa is responsible for 3 deaths, 2 in the Dominican Republic and 1 in St. Lucia. So Kelly, let's take a look at the overview with Elsa and let people know what they should watch out for today, for example, if you're in Key West, and how you should prepare.
Yeah, we definitely need to prepare now because we do expect some of those outer rain bands start to affect the area by tonight and into tomorrow, certainly. Here is a look at where it is right now, just to the east of Kingston, Jamaica, 45 miles east of there. It's slowed down in forward motion speed. In fact, this time yesterday, it was hauling fast at like 30, 31 miles an hour, but now it's only moving at 13 miles per hour. The winds have not changed. This is the brand new advisory just in moments ago from the National Hurricane Center, and the winds are still at 65 miles per hour as the hurricane hunters are flying through it right now and determining that this system is kind of status quo for now. So here's a look at where the winds are picking up. Guantanamo Bay, the eastern end of Cuba, 22 miles per hour. Over towards Port-au-Prince, this is one of the windier locations that we have seen so far this morning, with 25 mile per hour sustained winds and gusts to 37 miles per hour. So here's a look at the cloud shield encompassing much of eastern Cuba, closing in on Jamaica, kind of threading the needle, though, between Jamaica and Cuba, so staying over the water. And there's the chance we could see it intensify just a bit, up to perhaps 70 mile per hour winds, which is very close to a hurricane. You just need 74 mile per hour winds for it to be a Category 1 hurricane. So for now, tropical storm warnings in the red, including Jamaica, tropical storm watch over the western side of Cuba. But just in case, Tevin, we do have a hurricane watch for eastern Cuba as the winds are predicted to pick up a little bit. But most of the tropical models here, the wind forecast have, this is great news, keeping it below hurricane status as it approaches the Keys.
Below hurricane status, but we'll still see tropical storm impacts well inland all the way up and down the I-95 corridor into New England. Elsa is on track to bring wind and rain to most of the peninsula of Florida early in the week. Orlando likely to see downpours starting Monday night. Tropical storm conditions are possible in Orlando as we go throughout our Tuesday and into the evening hours here. So what we have right now, tropical storm watches are posted for portions of Lee and Collier counties and all the way down to the Keys here. So we'll see this likely start to spread towards the north and northwest once we get into, I would say, 36 hours out or greater in time. So today and to tomorrow, we'll likely see more of this. And some of those watches then start to turn into warnings too as Elsa's threat becomes a bit more imminent. But beyond Florida, look at this cone, folks. This goes all the way up into Jacksonville here, much of South Carolina, into North Carolina. And if this current track holds, we'll likely see impacts into perhaps New York City by Thursday and Friday. We'll stick with Florida for now, though. We'll see showers and thunderstorms stick with us throughout the day today, not just because of Elsa's moisture swinging in, but along the northern fringes of the Gulf Coast here, we actually have a stationary front, and stationary really means it's not moving by much, if it's moving at all. So overall, our rainfall chances are focused along I-10 and points towards the north. By Tuesday midday, now we start to see Elsa's track shift towards Fort Myers here, Tampa and St. Pete, Orlando, Ocala, Gainesville, Tallahassee, likely to see showers and thunderstorms, though the heaviest of that will be towards the east by Wednesday morning and throughout the day on Wednesday. Now it's a coastal storm for you if you're in a place like Brunswick, Georgia, all the way down to Savannah even and into portions of South Carolina. Overall, the heaviest rainfall from Elsa will likely focus between Tampa and St. Pete, Fort Myers, and down to southern Florida, but we can't rule out flash flooding for much of the state because of Elsa's impacts and the tropical-like downpours that we are anticipating. So by tomorrow, showers and thunderstorms are in the forecast, but then by tomorrow night, if you're in Naples, hunker down because that's when those tropical storm force winds starts to approach your area. Kelly.
Well, folks in Southwest Florida are hopefully getting ready for Elsa's arrival. A live look at beautiful blue sky over Naples. Look at that Earth Cam view where there'll be plenty of Independence Day sunshine, highs right around 90, but we can't rule out a passing summertime thunderstorm.
That's right. Showers and thunderstorms really pick up the pace into Monday. And Monday evening, tropical storm conditions from Elsa are likely in Naples. They do last through most of our Tuesday.
Well, Naples and Collier County sit in a hurricane alley of sorts, and here's why. Since records began in 1851, 74 tropical cyclones have passed over or near Naples, and that's an average of every 2.2 years.
Yeah, a lot of going on there. Let's see how Naples and Collier County are getting ready for Elsa. Joining us now is Chief Chris Roberts with the Collier County Sheriff's Office. Chief, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We know things will be busy, not just with the 4th of July holiday, but also with Elsa. So let us know what steps you're taking ahead of this storm.
Good morning, Kelly and Tevin. Starting Friday, we normally, as you can imagine, watch these things that you just mentioned. We see them quite regularly. So on Friday, we made sure, going through our operations center, make sure we have everything operating and functioning. Looking at our incident management plan going forward. Everybody has a specific duty assignment with all missions to keep our community and each other safe. We have some unique challenges here as a tourist destination, as you can imagine. Heavy influx of visitors this weekend from all over Florida, around the country, that might not be aware of the weather event. So we are using our very broad social media reach throughout a variety of platforms, which was very key during Hurricane Irma a few years ago. Longstanding partnerships with the local media and, of course, the Weather Channel to get the safety information out. And lots of presence with our deputies throughout the community who are out there prepared to help our residents when needed.
And Chief Roberts, as you watch the storm, we're watching it and tracking it here as well. But as of right now, are there any plans for evacuations and even possible shelters going up?
At this moment, our Collier County EOC is planning to just have everybody shelter in place.
And even though it's a holiday weekend, what do people in South Florida need to do today?
Today is 4th of July, and we certainly encourage them to get out and celebrate the birth of freedom in our country. We're here making sure that we're planned and ready to help them if needed, but just prepare, don't panic.
And does, being a holiday weekend, does it present any unique challenges as far as Elsa goes? You mentioned the fact that people are on vacation mode, right? They really need to know what's happening and when it comes to the weather.
Yes, and as mentioned a minute ago, we have a very, very broad social media reach throughout a variety of platforms, and we know that that reaches our visitors as well as our residents. We're putting information out there regularly.
All right, that is Chief Chris Roberts with the Collier County, Florida Sheriff's Office. Chief Roberts, thanks for joining us this morning. Prepare, don't panic. What a great message there.
Better be safe than sorry, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But there's always the next one too.
That's correct.
It is hurricane season. It does go all the way through the end of November, guys, and it's already off to a busy start.
Off to a busy start with Elsa, which is forecast to remain a tropical storm as it tracks across the southeast Wednesday and Thursday. If you live in places like Savannah, Georgia, or Charleston, South Carolina, now is the time to prepare your home for potentially damaging winds and flooding rains. We could see winds between 40 and 50 miles per hour, if not greater than that. So, Kelly, what should the folks inland prepare for?
You know, there's going to be that chance for some thunderstorms, sometimes even the possibility of isolated severe weather as you have a tropical system making landfall, interacting with land. So there is that potential. Flooding rain, though, that is usually what gets us, right? We do see, unfortunately, too many flood deaths every year, and we have to pay attention to how much rain, not just this frontal boundary is going to deliver to the Gulf Coast, but the storm itself. Tropical storm Elsa, anywhere from 1 to 2 inches in that darker green. This is just the European model, though. If we take a look at the American model, it's showing even heavier rainfall amounts. Most of it offshore, some of it touching the shore. The yellow indicates 3 to 5, but it looks like, according to this model, the heaviest rain, which is more than a foot, should remain offshore for the most part, but kind of brushing the lower keys, and that's where we do have those tropical storm watches in effect. The wind will be another issue. You know, even just winds of 30, 40 miles an hour is enough to topple trees onto power lines. So be prepared for some power outages, whether you live in Florida, along the coast of Georgia, the Carolinas. We see the winds increasing. This is Wednesday into Thursday. And notice the pink on the map. That's when we start to get into some of those stronger wind gusts around Charleston, 25, 30 miles an hour. Cape Hatteras Thursday morning, those winds will be picking up for you as well. And that wind increases all the way up to the Jersey Shore, the Delmarva Peninsula. So yeah, not the best beach weather coming up this week if this is your week to be on vacation. So pay attention to the weather. There will be impacts with Tropical Storm Elsa, not just in Florida, but all the way up the coast, Tevin.
All right, Kelly, well, check this out. Some wicked lightning and flooding downpours as severe thunderstorms march across Texas and other parts of the plains. 1.75 inches of rainfall, that's what registered in Midland, Odessa on Saturday. Nearly 2 inches around the greater Houston metro area and more than 4 inches reported in Liberty, Texas, some 40 miles northeast of downtown. And that, folks, came without a tropical entity. So that is what we have to watch out for this time of year. It's not just named storms, but some of the storms that go unnamed. And this storm will be named, or unnamed, if you will, a stationary front, because we have a stationary front that's just generally in this vicinity. It's not really budging, if it's budging at all. So we'll likely see repeated rounds of rain and thunderstorms fixated or focused along some of the same areas that saw it yesterday. They'll see it today and tomorrow too. Who's getting the rainfall right now? Well, Gainesville and Ocala along I-75, just south of Lake City here, and points towards the west near Cedar Key and Levy County here. We're seeing heavy rain and thunderstorms, all sub-severe at this hour, but frequent lightning right now and also heavy downpours too, coming along with flooding rainfall. There is our stationary front. So along this is where we see that best chance for rain and thunderstorms today, tomorrow, and even into Wednesday here. So the moisture swings in out of the Gulf there. We also get this tap from the Atlantic as Elsa starts to move towards the north and west and continues to move and eventually starts to recurve towards the north and east. So outside of Elsa, the heavy rainfall today will be west of Tallahassee all the way to New Orleans here, the Mobile Bay, and another zone too near the Houston metro area in Corpus Christi, where we're seeing heavy rain and thunderstorms, some 2 to 3 inches of rainfall here. But Kelly, there are others who could certainly use this rainfall that desperately need it.
Yeah, here in the West, too many fires to keep track of so early in the season, and it's a heartbreaking scene in Northern California. The U.S. Forest Service says the Salt Fire has destroyed 41 structures in Shasta County. 27 of them were homes. The Salt Fire now covers nearly 7,500 acres, containment just 5%. Firefighters say drought and heat mean fuel conditions look more like late August rather than early July. So we are tracking a lot of fires here in the West, where it continues to be very dry, and the forecast continues to be dry as well the next 7 days. This is all the way through next weekend. Nothing for Las Vegas, where it continues to be in the triple digits, Los Angeles as well. We have seen some moisture in Arizona lately, where we do need it, but we did have some flash flooding concerns there as well yesterday, more than an inch in some locations. 104 for Las Vegas today. You need the AC. Some of us do not have it in the Northwest. northwest, where the heat is going to be building across the next couple of days. Heat advisories, excessive heat warnings going back into effect here. Eastern Montana already in the triple digits. We're going to be 10 to 20 degrees above average the next few days. So that means millions of us will be dealing with this prolonged heat. We'll be right back.
USAA is
is dedicated to Earth and all its wonders. And filmmakers, it's your last chance to submit your work to the Pattern Earth Film Challenge. Submit your short film that focuses on our changing climate, eco-innovation, or sustainability for a chance to win $10,000. Plus, have your work featured on the Weather Channel and join our mission to inspire others to help shape Earth's future. Go to pattrn.com for details.
Wow, take a look at these huge waves, 12 to 14 feet high, crashing ashore in Santo Domingo, the southern coast of the Dominican Republic. Saw some limited damage and a bit of flooding on Saturday as the center of Elsa passed south of the island nation. Strong winds caused a wall to collapse, though, killing 2 people, and flooding in the southwestern part of the country did force some evacuations as well, unfortunately. But things are improving there. That was, of course, when we had a high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane. Now it is a tropical storm. So here it is, 65-mile-per-hour winds, located the center, if you will, just about 45 miles to the east-southeast of Kingston, Jamaica, and moving toward the west-northwest at 13 miles per hour, which is, half the speed that it was moving at yesterday. This time yesterday, it was hauling at like 30 miles an hour. So 65-mile-per-hour winds, that will be continuing to affect places like Cuba as we go throughout the day today. And then what happens when it reemerges over the water and heads for the Keys? For now, we have tropical storm watches posted for the lower Keys. It does include Key West. We'll have live reports from there coming up here on the Weather Channel. And here's the path of the storm. And remember, this cone is the approximation of just the center of the storm, because those tropical storm force winds do extend out more than 100 miles. So even though it goes over the Keys, that doesn't mean you're not going to feel anything over here in Miami or on the east coast of Florida. It does turn towards central Florida early Wednesday morning and then rapidly approaching Georgia and the Carolinas after that. So today is the day to prepare, because those conditions will be going downhill tonight into tomorrow. Tevin?
All right, well, just a slight chance of rain to start Independence Day in Estes Park, Colorado, known for being the base camp for the Rocky National Mountain Park. Estes Park will see a high of 70 degrees today. The chance for possible thunderstorms and showers, though, picking up a bit in the afternoon.
So, Tevin, as you know, many of our national parks are seeing a huge surge in visitors this summer as virus-weary Americans head back out on vacation again. But you can declare your independence from the crowds this holiday weekend by visiting some hidden jewels.
That's right, and we're joined live now by Jim Pattis, co-founder of More Than Just Parks. Jim, good morning to you, my friend. Question for you. There are parks people can visit this holiday weekend while avoiding some of those huge crowds out there we're seeing. Where are those parks?
Yeah, good morning, Tevin. Some of those parks we're talking about are in places that are near other, parks that are seeing huge visitation. So we're talking about places like Capitol Reef National Park in southern Utah. That's near, Zion and places like that. You get a lot of the same scenery without having those huge crushes of crowds and lines to deal with. Another one of those places is Voyageurs National Park, way up in northern Minnesota. That's going to be one where you're really never going to see any crowds, and the summer and the fall are great times to get out there, go fishing, an awesome park up there. Another one is North Cascades National Park in Washington State. Um, Washington State has other parks like Olympic and Mount Rainier that get a lot of visitation, but North Cascades has all of that same, beautiful Cascade mountain range scenery without any of the visitors. And lastly, I would really recommend if you're in California, head on up to Redwood National Park instead of maybe some of the more crowded places like Yosemite. Redwood National Park, you get a chance to see the tallest trees in America, and it's nice and spread out, so you don't have the kind of bottleneck crowds that you're seeing right now in a lot of these parks.
All right, those are some great ideas, Jim, but I know national parks aren't the only places to get outside this summer. Tell us about some of the best kept secrets that might be even less crowded.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about national forests here. These are places that are every bit as beautiful as the national parks. A lot of the same scenery, but really have a fraction of the crowd. So if you're really looking to ditch the crowds altogether this summer, head to places like the Black Hills in South Dakota. That's going to be right next to Mount Rushmore, but you're not going to be seeing any of the crowds that you'd be seeing at some of those popular places. Another one's Bridger Teton National Forest, and that's right next to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. But again, you won't see any of those crowds, but you'll get to see, the bison and the elk and all of those, iconic wildlife and the scenery there. Another one I really like is Dixie National Forest in Utah. That's in southern Utah. Get that red rock scenery, lots of great hiking opportunities there, but without the crowds that you might see in some of the parks there like Bryce Canyon and Zion. And then lastly, I like Flathead National Forest, way up in Montana near Glacier
Yeah.
National Park. That's a great one to get out to.
Oh, Jim, these are some great ideas, but the secret, is out of the bag now. So maybe they will become more crowded. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Jim Padditz of More Than Just Parks. Some great ideas as we celebrate the summer and, of course, America's birthday today. And Tevin, we're going to have much more on the weather, including here in the Mid-Atlantic.
Looks beautiful for now, but we've got thunderstorms in the forecast later on this week, courtesy of Elsa. We'll explain next.
Tropical storm Elsa is on the move across the Caribbean right now, located just to the east of Jamaica. Still expected to reach Florida beginning Monday night.
And let's get you caught up to speed with the latest on what we know right now. Elsa, already a deadly storm, being blamed for 3 deaths in the Caribbean, 1 in St. Lucia and 2 in the Dominican Republic. Tropical storm watches are posted across the Florida Keys. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declaring a state of emergency for 15 Florida counties.
All right, welcome back into this busy edition as you're watching America's Weekend Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Kelly Cass.
And I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten. All eyes are, of course, on Tropical Storm Elsa as it quickly approaches the Florida Keys. But it's also the 4th of July weekend where people may want to head out to the beach or the barbecue.
And you can enjoy that today across much of Florida. It's a beautiful scene in Key West this morning. We do have a tropical storm watch in effect, though, so hopefully you guys are paying attention to the weather, not just what the menu is for your 4th of July barbecue. We do have sunshine for most of the day. Can't rule out a pop-up shower or storm, but then it's tropical storm conditions that could fire up beginning tomorrow evening, Tevin. So we'll see what happens as the system moves over Cuba and what it looks like after that.
Yeah, Kelly, we did get that 8 a.m. advisory, by the way, from the National Hurricane Center. Not a lot of major changes coming in with Tropical Storm Elsa. The storm now winds at 65 miles per hour. It's moving towards the west-northwest at about 13 miles per hour. So not a lot of updates or changes since the 5 a.m. advisory, but a lot has happened over the last 24 hours or so. In fact, just yesterday, we were noticing a forward motion at 30 miles an hour. So now that slowing down has actually helped the center of the storm, the mid-level center of the storm, meet up with the lower level center of the storm. That's why we're seeing still quite the healthy storm here. However, as we start to notice the storm move over Cuba, as Elsa moves over Cuba, then we get into mountainous terrain. And what does that do for tropical entities? Ultimately, that can bring in some shear and eat away at the flow or the circulation about Elsa. As we continue to look at this, the visible satellite here with Elsa, I'm noticing a bit more convection on the southwestern side and on the western side of the storm. So perhaps that also lending itself to a strengthening storm. But overall, we're not expecting it to strengthen much farther than where it's at right now with 65 mile per hour winds. We do have hurricane watches, though, posted for eastern portions of Cuba. Towards the north and west, we actually have tropical storm storm watches posted too. So over time, we'll notice those watches turning to warnings. And for some of the zones, say for you in South Florida, if you're not under a tropical storm watch right now, it's very likely you'll be, especially in southwestern Florida, it's likely you'll be under a tropical storm watch, if not by the midday hours, by tonight, and certainly into tomorrow morning. Kelly.
Tevin, we have new video showing the first moments after the collapse of the Champlain Towers South condo building in Surfside, Florida, 10 days ago. Officials say the toll this morning stands at 24 dead and 121 missing. Search and rescue efforts have been suspended. The plan is to demolish the rest of the structure possibly tomorrow before we get those impacts from Tropical Storm Elsa.
We're preparing for the risk of isolated tornadoes, storm surge, heavy rainfall, and flash flooding. The state has begun executing contingency plans for the tropical storm Elsa and Surfside co-response.
As we look at the forecast cone, notice that Surfside, the Miami-Dade area, not officially in the forecast cone, but that doesn't mean you're not going to feel those impacts from the storm, because remember, those tropical storm conditions extend quite a ways out from the center, and this is just a forecast for the center of Elsa. So it's going to be moving past Cuba. We'll see what happens as it interacts with land, possibly some strengthening or some weakening, I should say, then moving out over the warmer waters again south of the Keys. And it looks like right now Key West could be experiencing 50-mile-per-hour winds as we head through early Tuesday morning, 50 to 60-mile-per-hour winds working their way up toward Fort Myers and the Tampa Bay area, depending on how much time is spent over the waters of the eastern Gulf of Mexico. You can see from the forecast through tomorrow night, approaching Key West, those squalls moving on through, those rain bands producing some strong winds, possibly some power outages to go along with the possibility of flooding, and that system will quickly move towards central Florida, northern Florida, and move up toward Georgia and the Carolinas Wednesday into Thursday. So there's going to be that possibility for flash flooding anywhere from the Tampa Bay area down toward the Keys. And we'll take a look at Key West, the forecast, which, by the way, we have our Weather Channel folks live from here later on today. Notice the winds ramping up Monday night into Tuesday, 25 to 30 miles an hour with some storms. Sometimes severe weather accompanies these tropical systems as they interact with land. Fort Myers, Florida, this is in the southwestern part of the state. Here, too, we've got our eye on Elsa with the showers and storms impacting you guys Monday night, Tuesday, 82 degrees, and then still the chance for some isolated storms on Tuesday night, and temperatures only in the 70s. It's going to be a very humid environment, very gusty out there as well, and we are tracking Elsa not just in Florida, all the way up the 95 corridor. Even some of you in the Northeast will get affected by Elsa. More on that coming up. Happy 4th of July. Call it the calm before the storm. Certainly a gorgeous day in Key West, Florida. These are scenes from yesterday. Look at that blue sky, the palm trees barely moving. It's going to be another gorgeous one today. Sunshine and 89 degrees. Then the showers start to move into the area starting tonight, and we've got those impacts from Tropical Storm Elsa moving in later tomorrow. So I know you're thinking vacation plans, you know, where do I want to go today? What do I want to eat or drink on the beach? But you really need to pay close attention to the weather and what happens with Tropical Storm Elsa. Of course, the Hurricane Center, they've been giving us updates, and this is the newest one from just the 8 o'clock hour. 65-mile-per-hour winds. The center is located about 45 miles to the east of Kingston, Jamaica, where the winds so far this morning have been relatively quiet. However, notice the blossoming of convection right over the island of Jamaica, and also some of those stronger winds reaching up towards Haiti and the eastern end of Cuba, where the winds will be increasing throughout the day and the weather deteriorating. After Cuba, what becomes of Elsa? We'll be interacting with some mountainous terrain, especially over the eastern half of Cuba. They've got mountains up and over 6,000 feet. So certainly some weakening to be expected. However, maintaining tropical storm status as it approaches the Keys early Tuesday morning. So your preparations need to be completed by later on today and into early tomorrow. And then the rest of southwest Florida up towards Tampa between Tuesday and Wednesday morning, the winds around 50 to 60 miles an hour, enough to cause some power outages and some heavy rain along the way as we track it, quickly racing to the north and east over Georgia and the Carolinas eventually. So you can see where we have tropical storm watches posted for now across the lower Keys, including Key West. The last time we had a landfalling July tropical storm this time of year was actually Bonnie back in 2010. So it's not too often we see this kind of activity, especially so early in the season. So prepare now. You can see it impacting Cuba throughout the day today and into tomorrow morning. And then, of course, it's all about southwestern Florida Florida Monday into Tuesday. Ted?
All right, Kelly, well, let's move a little bit further towards the north here where we could likely see impacts from tropical storm Elsa later on in the week. A great day today, though, for a cookout in Cleveland, where we have sunny skies and a high in the lower 80s. Some clouds streaming on in tonight. Plenty of places, though, in the metro area to watch fireworks, including the Light Up the Lake display, which gets underway at dusk. And millions will be firing up their grills today for a cookout with family and friends. But before you grill out, you actually got to clean that grill up. And before and after, it can oftentimes be the messiest chore out there, cleaning up the grill. But Weather Channel meteorologist and grill meister himself, Mike Seidel, shows us some tools to make the job a little bit easier.
There's nothing better than inviting friends and family over for an old-fashioned barbecue. But at some point, you're going to have to clean this grill. Look at the mess we have here. Today, we're going to try 4 cleaning hacks to see if they actually work. But first things first, let's get this grill nice and hot, and then we'll start the cleaning process. The grill now is nice and hot, so let's see if these cleaning hacks make it easier. First off, let's do the lemon. Just cut one in half here. What you want to do, though, is spin it around in the salt. This gives us some abrasive quality. Stick it in the old barbecue fork. Now grab the glove. You always want to be safe. You don't want to get burned. We'll come over to the grill. It is hot. In fact, we've got some fire there, and let's see how it goes. The acidity and moisture from the lemon have done their trick. This works. You can actually see some of the silver on the grill, so the lemon has gotten rid of some of that black, greasy gunk. Now let's try an onion. They say that the white onion is the best for cleaning a grill. The juices from the onion turn into steam and help clean the grill, and also takes care of maybe any little wire filaments that were left behind when you used the wire brush to originally clean off the super thick gunk on the grate. Looking at the grate, just like the lemon, it's taken off a fair amount of the grease and gunk from previous barbecues, so I'll have to give the onion a thumbs up. Now let's try some beer. The alcohol in the beer acts as a degreaser. You pour it over the hot grate. You can use paper towels or newspaper, give it some elbow grease. Although the paper towel does have some residue on it, I don't know if it's any more than if you just used a wet rag. So right now, I'd say the beer is not a great hack. Now let's try the vinegar. All you need is a spray bottle and mix equal parts vinegar and water. Shake it up nicely. And remember, wait for the grill to cool down so it's cool to the touch, and just spray the vinegar on. The acidity in it will start to cut through the grease and grime, and we'll let it sit now for at least 10 minutes. Now that the vinegar has done its job, grab some aluminum foil and roll it up into a ball, and then come over here and just rub the grill back and forth. It turns out we saved the best for last. The vinegar by far did the best job on cleaning the grill. Just a few household items. You can come out here and clean the grill and be ready for the next barbecue. Have a great summer and happy grilling.
All right, Mike, thanks for that. Hey, what a difference a week makes, right? Seattle, Washington expecting a high of only 79 degrees today. Overhead clouds here are certainly not that good for fireworks, but those should clear out as we go throughout the day today. It is great for runners, though, planning to pound the pavement in one of the road races being held in the area today. Let's look at your 4th of July forecast in Seattle for the Red, White, and Boom run today. Yes, cloudy conditions this morning. We rid ourselves of those clouds as we go through the midday hours, and we top out near 71 degrees by 1 o'clock and closer into the mid-70s by later on today. The Firecracker Foot Race in Park Rapids, Minnesota here as you're rapidly running. The temperatures are rapidly warming. By 10 o'clock today, we're at 82, and by 11 p.m., we're closer to 11 a.m., we're closer towards about 85 degrees. And one more for you in Santa Monica, California. Sunny skies throughout the day today.
Get more out of summer with more from the Home Depot.
Hurricane hunters are keeping a close eye on Elsa from up above. Crews plan 2 flights into the tropical storm today. One is actually going on right now, another one early this afternoon. The weather data these hurricane hunters gather helps shape the forecasts that are put out by the National Hurricane Center. So they're getting a sampling of everything from pressure and winds, and they basically send it back to NHC in Miami, and then we have ourselves not just the current status of the storm, but also a hint at where it's going in the future as well. So here's a look at where they are, probably going through a little bit of turbulence, a little bumpy ride out there as they're traveling through some of the heavier rain bands surrounding Elsa, but not finding anything above tropical storm strength. So that's certainly the good news. The tropical storm pretty much maintaining itself through the morning hours. Not much has changed from the previous advisory at 5 a.m. to the 8 a.m. advisory. The winds are still 65 miles per hour. And here's the schedule for today. Another one goes into the storm at 4 o'clock and then early tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. And by that time, we will see our storm kind of near the coast of Cuba here. So for now, this is where it's located, just to the east northeast of Kingston, Jamaica, 45 miles away from there. But you can see the blossoming of convection right over the island of Jamaica. So they're encountering some pretty rough weather right now. And the system is moving only at 13 miles an hour. This time yesterday, it was hauling at like 30, 31 miles per hour. So it has slowed down. And here's the path of the storm moving across Cuba as we head through tomorrow morning, also into the water here, the very warm water between Cuba and Florida. So we'll see what this system looks like after it interacts with land, very mountainous terrain, but certainly maintaining itself as a tropical storm approaching the Keys and eventually Naples and Sarasota during the day on Tuesday. So here's a look at our rain forecast with Elsa as it moves on up. Remember, we've got a frontal boundary also draped across the northern part of Florida. That's your rain and storms for today. But eventually we see the breezy, gusty conditions for Key West throughout the day on Tuesday. There is the potential for some power outages. So if you're running around for, 4th of July things, make sure you have the batteries for the flashlights ready to go just in case. And then we see our system moving through Tampa Bay, the I-4 corridor during the day Wednesday. So some squally weather, gusty, heavy rain through Georgia and the Carolinas and beyond, because Tevin, this thing is going to reach all the way to the north and east the next several days.
All right, let's take a live look from eastern Georgia, where a hot Independence Day is on tap for the area. I expect sunny skies throughout the day with highs climbing into the lower 90s. But enjoy the nice weather now with possible storms moving in as soon as Tuesday. So that's Augusta, Georgia, but even into the coastal plains of Georgia, to Brunswick, to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, to Beaufort, South Carolina, and even Charleston here. You can start to tell where the footprint of Elsa will be by the middle of the week. And then by the end of the week, look, this thing races, if it holds together, goes all the way up into portions of New England and along the I-95 corridor. So even beyond southern portions of Florida and the Florida Straits, we're likely to see tropical storm gusts, at the very least, into a place like Raleigh, North Carolina, and perhaps into New York City and on Long Island. So let's time things out from Wednesday and beyond. We're looking at now 20 to 25 mile per hour winds near Charleston, South Carolina. Near Ocean City, you're also seeing about 30 to 35 mile per hour winds, or maybe even 40 mile per hour winds closer to Thursday at about 8 o'clock in the evening to 10 p.m. at night. And beyond that, what happens Friday morning? Well, the system starts to pull away, but I think we do see that influence of the wind action here. So perhaps at the very least rip currents along portions of the tri-state too and for the Jersey coast. Taking a look at the GFS computer model here, this is much different than the European solution. The GFS actually says we may see about 3 to 5 inches of rain here in southern portions of Georgia and inland. So this is why, yes, we have coastal impacts, but we also have inland impacts that we have to take into consideration. That 3 to 5 inches of rainfall, if that happens in a short amount of time, can lead to flash flooding. We also see that potential too north of Tampa near the Levy County area and also Cedar Key, Florida area. Kelly.
And from that tropical storm, Tevin, we've got a stationary front bringing us problems along the Gulf Coast. Look at what it did to New Orleans. We had some flash flooding in the Big Easy. More showers and storms are possible today on this Independence Day. And when it's not raining, you'll have hazy, humid conditions, very warm with highs in the mid-80s. So if you're a visitor to New Orleans, Yes, be prepared with the umbrellas, the rain gear. We've got more of that on the way. Most of the heavy showers and storms are just offshore the coast of Texas, but there are a few pockets of rain in and around the Texas Hill Country. Some showers and storms not too far away from the coast. Some of the barrier islands certainly experiencing the lightning. And we've got moderate rip current risks too. That coming out of the National Weather Service in Corpus Christi, Texas. So heading out to South Padre, keep that in mind. Travelers, beware. I-10 could be a rough go. We also had flooding in Orange, Texas, over there in the southeastern part of the state yesterday. So there's more of that on the way. The I-35 corridor will also be impacted by the showers and storms. As far north as Dallas, probably just a hot, dry day for you. 89 degrees, mid-80s from Oklahoma City to Beale Street in Memphis. Your better chance for the showers and storms right along the Gulf Coast. All that moisture hanging around with that frontal boundary. Now, as you go northward, it's actually hotter here. The drier air definitely heats up more efficiently. So we got temperatures in the triple digits in places like Pierce, South Dakota, 95 in Minneapolis. Great day to take some boats out on the lakes there in Minnesota. Just beware, though, in the northern part of the state and also here down toward Minneapolis, there is that possibility of some isolated severe weather, a little bit more likely towards Duluth and certainly down toward the western parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and southwestern Kansas. So beware of damaging winds, possibly hail, and some tornadoes can't be ruled out. Much more coverage on Tropical Storm Elsa, including live reports from Key West coming up.
Age is just...
Sights from Elsa already on this July 4th. Good Sunday morning and welcome to Weekend Recharge. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow. Also, happy 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. I'm coming to you live from Key West, Florida. Also back in the studio, we have Felicia Combs and Dr. Greg Postel. They are standing by. We'll get to them momentarily. But I'm here in the Keys because we're under a tropical storm watch here because of Elsa. Elsa, fortunately, still just a tropical storm, but as you see the path, it is heading towards the U.S., including the Keys. Parts of the middle and lower Keys under a tropical storm watch, and then the cone does take that center point into southwest Florida after it passes by the Keys, or perhaps even the dry Tortugas a little farther out towards the Atlantic and the Florida Strait. But the concern is impacts. We'll have impacts well outside the cone, while Miami, they are not in the cone. They will definitely have impacts. That is one metropolitan area that is vulnerable to coastal rise of water, and we saw that with Hurricane Irma a number of years ago. The last time the Keys had a direct impact from a tropical storm in July was 2010. We've had plenty of impacts between now and 2010, but in terms of the month of July in the Keys, 2010, that was Tropical Storm Bonnie. But before we get more about what we can expect here across the Keys and the rest of the U.S., because it's not just localized here in Florida, we'll talk that in a moment. But right now, we still have a lot of people trying to celebrate our nation's birthday today, and beautiful weather for a good chunk of the nation for it. I know, Felicia, good morning to you. You are tracking our Sunday snapshot.
Yeah, some of us are going to be dealing with rain and storms. Some of us, though, are going to have beautiful days. So let's talk about what you can expect, who's going to have to plan around the weather, and who is going to be seeing absolutely beautiful weather. This is not what well, let's see if we can get the graphic up here because that would be helpful. Obviously, that's not what's happening right now, but I can tell you if you had rain yesterday along that I-10 corridor, you're probably going to have some rain today, and then much of the country is going to have a pretty day today. Well, parts of Haiti taking a battering from Tropical Storm Elsa. This is in the town of St. John, where you can see the winds whipping around those palm trees. It's not just the winds that are a concern in Haiti, but heavy rain in southern parts of the country could trigger flash floods and mudslides. And of course, all eyes on Elsa right now, as we mentioned. That is why we have Paul Goodlow live in Key West, one of the places that is in the cone currently. Hey, Paul.
Yes, hey there, Felicia. We definitely are concerned, although today should be a fantastic day. So if you're here vacationing, and enjoy it, but if you're here, perhaps if you live here, you want to also take some of this time, especially the daytime hours, to prepare just in case. Again, it's still forecast to become a tropical storm, and this area is certainly no stranger. There's only one road in and out and off the Keys here. Let's give you the very latest as the 8 o'clock advisory we have here. It's a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. But the speed, at one point this was moving 27, 28, 30, 31 miles per hour. That has backed down to 13 miles per hour, which is kind of a bad thing. It's giving that convection time to kind of co-locate with that center of low pressure, which is what it needs to strengthen. Right now, Jamaica is seeing a lot of impacts, a lot of rain with this, some wind, but the good news is it should be passing you by as we head throughout the day, improving weather for you if you're there vacationing. But the path continues to take it on towards the northwest, west-northwest as it then crosses Cuba. Originally, the path might have taken it across a good duration of Cuba, which could disrupt the center and organization. Now it's going through a shorter part, a thinner part of the island nation here. We still have tropical storm watches up for parts of Cuba. We have tropical storm warnings up for parts of Cuba as well as Haiti and Jamaica right now. And a hurricane watch up for parts of Cuba because we still can't rule out this strengthening to a hurricane. And in terms of here in South Florida, we do have a tropical storm watch out for here in the lower Keys here to the dry Tortugas. And we're concerned for weather going downhill as we head throughout the day on Monday and Tuesday. So if you are here for the 4th, enjoy it, but perhaps have plans to leave early in the morning to kind of perhaps get a jump on the rush here. I want to bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Greg Postel. And Greg, this thing is slowing down. And yesterday, the biggest problem was the convection was well out behind the center, and that was delaying its kind of organization. Now things are slowing down. Is that kind of a bad sign for this thing perhaps getting its act together and being a larger storm as it approaches the U.S.?
It could be, but we're not seeing signs of that strengthening yet. The hurricane hunters are in there right now, and I'm going to show you what they're finding. Surprisingly, a storm that doesn't have very much of low pressure with it at all. I'll get to that in a second, which is remarkable when you look at the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of cloud, a lot of thunderstorm activity all around Tropical Storm Elsa, but the weather in, let's say, much of Florida or the Bahamas or even much of Cuba for that matter is really nice, and it is not being impacted significantly by Elsa. But let's have a look at what's going on overall. And I'm not showing you a lot of these arrows here and a lot of the shading here in the background to give you an exact replica of the wind speeds. But I do wanted to point out that there are some pretty strong winds hundreds of miles away from where the center of lowest pressure is here. So that will give you in mind the idea that even on the east coast of Florida, or all up and down the eastern seaboard, wherever Elsa gets going and moves to, we are going to see some pretty breezy conditions, especially off the Atlantic, and some onshore winds as well. But look at what's going on right now. Paul was mentioning there's a lot of thunderstorm activity now in the vicinity of where the center is, which is not really what we saw yesterday. And this could lead to strengthening in due time. That might take a while, but it would depend on a lot of thunderstorms hanging on, remaining durable. We're not really seeing that. They're kind of flaring up, collapsing, flaring up, collapsing. That's all part of the process, but we're not seeing the strengthening yet. And I mentioned the pressure. Well, the vortex message, the most recent one, when the hurricane hunters went right through it, 1,011 millibars. That's not even low on your home barometer. There were some pretty strong wind speeds out here, Felicia, over 50 miles per hour, and we're about ready to take another pass into that center to see exactly what they find. We'll have that in just a little bit, Felicia.
Yeah, Dr. Postel. So, of course, we want to keep you updated on what we know right now. So let's get you caught up to speed. Right now, more than 55,000 are under tropical storm alerts. Florida's governor issued a state of emergency for 15 counties ahead of the storm this weekend. Demolition preps are underway in Surfside at the site of that collapsed condo in advance of Elsa's approach to South Florida. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, at least 3 people have died as a result of the storm, and there are more than 740 reports of structural damage in Barbados. So, of course, Dr. Postel, there's a lot to talk about with this system. A lot of times, if it's a tropical storm or a Category 1, it gets shrugged off a little bit. But as we've seen as it moved through the Lesser Antilles, this is a formidable, storm. The rain that's going to come along with it, the wind, regardless, it's going to cause some problems.
It is. Heavy rain, coastal flooding, all of the trappings that come with a tropical system. And that is something to contend with. Florida Keys, Florida, southeastern United States, and many other places. So it is a circulation, a tropical system to deal with. And I want to show this picture once again to show you context, how far away it is from many of us in the Bahamas and or the Florida Keys or much of Florida. It's still a long way, and it is slowing down a little bit. But if you look at the path that it could take, and maybe some of us are wondering, well, could it eventually get into the western Gulf of Mexico? Is Texas in play or Louisiana? Well, not really, and here's why. Because the winds aloft are going to kind of prevent that from happening. They're giving us an option that is likely more in that direction, which is why the cone is shaped like it is. There is enough of a headwind in this part of the Gulf of Mexico to really discount that possibility. That is not a likely scenario by any means. It is more likely going to remain on the charts, on the path that the National Hurricane Center has kind of figured all along. They've done a really good job maintaining the consistency of this cone, and you can see that it does include a lot of Florida. But one thing I want to point out again, the center, let's just say, if you look at the models, the center passes somewhere inside of that cone, maybe on the western side. That seems to be a consensus right now. There is going to be a lot of significant impacts even on the east coast of Florida with a strong southeasterly wind, very likely into coastal Georgia and South Carolina as well as we head into the early part of the upcoming week. So that is something to consider. Here's something else to consider. You might be thinking, well, are any of those models strengthening this thing into a hurricane? Well, if you look at them, they're not. They're actually keeping it at tropical storm strength. Again, hurricane force, the cutoff would be 74 miles per hour and above, and this is the timestamp on the bottom. So this is going forward in time, and you can see each one of those lines keeps it underneath that hurricane force. So really the guidance is relatively bearish, Felicia, on this becoming a hurricane. But the point is, as you and Paul have mentioned, we are going to see a lot of rain, coastal flooding, even on the East Coast going into early next week. Heads up.
Yeah, it's not just the cone that you have to be concerned about. It's all the impacts that will be felt outside of the cone. Thanks, Dr. Postel. Well, summer downpours are triggering street flooding in major Gulf Coast cities like Houston and Tampa. Nearly 2 inches of rain in Houston Saturday, while parts of Tampa Bay got doused with 3.5 inches. A stalled front is going to help trigger more thunderstorms for Houston today, while Elsa brings heavy rain to Tampa this week. So you guys have already had your fair share of that wet weather, before any sort of tropical system. The tropical moisture certainly has been in place. We are starting off your morning already with some showers and storms moving through north and central Florida. That 95 and 75 corridor going to be messy, and these are going to continue to fill in eastward across that I-4 corridor as well. As we look back west through the Gulf of Mexico, can you tell where we have that front hanging out? Well, that's where you're seeing all those showers and storms. Now, the good news is most of this is offshore currently. The bad news is it's hanging out throughout your day, and it's going to bobble up and down. So all that I-10 corridor, once again today, you have that chance for some storms. You can see the steady stream of rain coming from that 35 corridor down toward Houston. Victoria, you're getting some rain right now, as well as San Antonio. Mainly just showers moving through Texas, but as you get some of that daytime heating, with that frontal boundary hanging around and abundant tropical moisture in place, well, you are going to have that possibility for heavy rain and storms even as we head into the early part of the week. So here's what we're looking at: increasing rain and storms actually even as we head into Monday and Tuesday. Places like Houston, New Orleans, Mobile, you guys are going to be stuck in this messy pattern. That's today. Heading into tomorrow as well, not much of a change. So you are kicking off your Monday with some of those showers and storms around. Now, you're probably tired of it at this point, but the good news is it's not going to be a complete washout. You're just going to have to plan around the showers and storms a bit tomorrow. Into Tuesday, it does lift a bit farther north, so now we're seeing places like Montgomery and Jackson and Dallas with a better chance of seeing some of those showers and storms. Now, are any of these going to be huge rainmakers? Possibly if you get some of those storms lined up one after another, but generally we're looking at about 1 to 2 inches or about an inch across the south through Monday afternoon. Now, of course, some of that tropical moisture surging north. This is going to largely depend on the track that Elsa ends up taking. As we know, got our own Paul Goodlow. He's in Key West this morning, one of the places that's in the cone for impacts from Elsa. Hey, Paul.
Hey there, Felicia, and yeah, the sun is up. Wind barely a whisper out here, so it's definitely steaming up pretty fast. But the concern is things will go downhill quickly. Once Elsa moves across Cuba, we start seeing the clouds coming in probably throughout the day on Monday. So a lot of concern when you live on an island, a string of islands with one road back to the mainland. Let's bring in Kristen Livingood. She's the Public Information Officer with Monroe County. Thanks for joining us. And what's your message this morning for people who not only live here across the Keys, but also who are visiting here, trying to have a great holiday vacation, perhaps the first vacation in over a year, enjoying our 4th of July holiday?
Good morning, Paul. Yes, our messaging today is if you are a visitor down here, obviously we want you to stay and enjoy this picture perfect day, as you can tell that we're having right now, and enjoy the fireworks tonight. But to make plans for leaving tomorrow morning earlier than normal, usually checkout is around 11 through, from our hotels, 11 or 12. That's going to put people on the road in the Upper Keys at, 2, 3 o'clock, when we could start seeing some squalls from this storm. And we don't want, even on non-busy holiday weekends, we can see some traffic issues in the Upper Keys. So we're trying to alleviate some of those traffic issues that we might see tomorrow. So if you are a visitor down here in the Florida Keys, we are asking that you, maybe move your travel plans so that you leave earlier in the morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, or even consider extending your stay and staying down here in the Florida Keys for a couple extra days through Wednesday, when our conditions will be normal summertime conditions again.
And let's talk about the people who perhaps will extend it, or perhaps even are here for a week or more. What should they do, knowing that now Key West is under a tropical storm watch?
Well, our residents are no strangers to tropical storms and to squalls that come through. So we've been asking everyone to take their precautions, make sure that they bring in their umbrellas and their patio furniture. Also make sure that, we could lose power. We have a lot of times where we do have a sailboat that will, come unmoored and hit into our power lines down here, and that's no fun. So you could be without power for a couple hours, and just make sure that everybody is safe and take those precautions, and anyone living aboard or in a mobile home get into a good spot for the storm coming up.
Great information. Thank you so much for your time. That is Kristen Livingood with the Monroe County Public Information Office. Thank you so much for joining us. But the word is now is to prepare. Still enjoy the 4th tonight, but prepare for Elsa coming late Monday into Tuesday.
Around here, they say if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute.
I love to watch the waves after a storm. The storm can be long gone, but the waves just keep going.
Ask my history teacher where to go to college. He said, go where you like the weather. Best advice I've ever gotten.
Get into the out there. The Weather Channel.
The hurricane hunters keeping busy this weekend, keeping tabs on Tropical Storm Elsa. This flight yesterday evening, you can see the sun setting in the background, and they reported that Elsa was weakening slightly and slowing down from its incredibly rapid pace across the Caribbean. How about these shots? Kind of would love to be on one of those planes. Someday, we'll see about that. But yeah, for the most part, actually, those flights are fairly smooth. Depending on the storm, and otherwise, it can get pretty rough. Let's have a look at Tropical Storm Elsa right now in the big picture to give you an idea where it is relative to parts of the southeastern U.S. and the Caribbean. And we see that really the weather over much of Cuba is perfectly fine, not really being impacted by Elsa, which is here. Nor is the weather in the Bahamas or the central and southern parts of Florida really impacted at all right now. And that's a good thing. Elsa's a long way away still and slowing down a little bit. But the weather will get worse. And it may get worse for a lot of people. And one of the reasons why is because, well, maybe it's not that strong overall in terms of the way hurricanes and tropical storms can go. It's got a pretty broad wind field. I mean, the models, now this is an estimate from the models, but they're saying that there's a pretty strong 20 to 30, maybe even higher than that, wind pattern way around this thing, especially on the east side, extending out hundreds of miles. So let's just say Elsa gets into the Gulf of Mexico, even west of the western part of Florida. It will likely bring a strong east wind into the east part of Florida, from Miami all the way up through Jacksonville, Georgia, South Carolina coast, and beyond. This is a fairly big circulation overall, so we've got to pay close attention to it. What's going on right now in the middle of it does also matter for the size of the wind field and the strength of it overall. We're seeing a lot of bubbling up here in the clouds. Those are a lot of thunderstorms. None of them are particularly durable. They flare up, last a few hours, and then they fall down. Now, that's sometimes part of the maturation. But it also, in order to really lock in on these clusters of storms leading to an immediate strengthening, they need to be alive for longer than a few hours. They need to really sort of fix things in place before we can see substantial pressure drops. We're not really seeing that right now. The hurricane hunters earlier, about an hour or two ago, flew through the area of lowest pressure and found only 1,011 millibars. That's not very low. In fact, that's about average globally. So we're not seeing a lot there, but there's some really strong winds with the thunderstorms on that eastern semicircle. And we just went through that center again. I'm waiting for the latest vortex message to find out if indeed the pressure has come down. Felicia, we'll bring that to you as soon as we get it.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. Well, there's concern today that lightning could start even more fires in western Canada. Tuesday, temperatures reached a record-shattering 121 degrees. Now, the next day, a fire erupted and destroyed most of the town of Lytton. Right now, there are more than 170 fires burning in British Columbia. Well, sunshine breaking out over St. Cloud, Minnesota today. They're expecting another scorcher, expecting a high of 97, which would tie the all-time record for the day set back in 2012. The heat could trigger the formation of thunderstorms later in the day as well. And that is part of the problem. A lot of times when you have this very dry air in place, you get the thunderstorms, and that can strike up fires because you're not getting enough rain to offset the lightning-caused fire. So here's what we're looking at in terms of active wildfires that are greater than 100 acres. We have 47 going right now. You can see quite a few focused over the Four Corners region, and then as we look back toward California as well. The problem is, while we are getting some rain in some of the places that need it across eastern portions of the Four Corners region, very, very dry still for Nevada, California, eastern or western Arizona, much of Utah as well, and that's where we could really use some of that rain. We're not getting that, but we are getting the heat. It is sticking around. 102 in Salt Lake City today, 103 in Vegas, nearing the triple digits in Boise. You're very, very close there. And so these temperatures are still above average. They're not the record-shattering, crazy temperatures that we saw last week, but still very, very hot for this part of the country for this time of year. We've got heat advisories and excessive heat warnings in place, and that is the dangerous heat sticking around when you're talking about many of the homes in this area not having that central AC, so it's just impossible to get cool. And here's part of the problem. The temperatures are well above average into early next week. We've had this prolonged period of this heat where it's very hot during the day, and it's really not cooling off much overnight either. So you're not getting any relief at any point, and that provides a lot of stress on the body. Temperatures remaining 90s and 100s as we head through the week. Our coverage of Tropical Storm Elsa continues. Meteorologist Paul Goodlow is live in Key West as preparations get underway.
Yes, we're here in Key West. We're under a tropical storm watch, but the impacts from Elsa will not only be here across the Keys, it's going also across parts of southwestern Florida, the southeast, mid-Atlantic, even the Carolinas and the Northeast. You can stay tuned for the inland impacts that we'll see as we head into this week, coming up on Weekend Recharge. Oh, no.
Search and rescue efforts have been put on hold in Surfside, Florida, as Tropical Storm Elsa threatens the Sunshine State. Demolition crews are preparing to bring down the remainder of the partially collapsed condo that officials say is at a heightened risk of collapsing due to the storm. 121 people still remain unaccounted for. The death toll right now stands at 24. Our Justin Michaels will be reporting live from Surfside today, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Well, half past the hour's Weekend Recharge rolls on. I'm meteorologist Felicia Combs. Tropical Storm Elsa lashing parts of Cuba and Jamaica with rain and wind as it heads toward Florida. Our Paul Goodlow is live in Key West. We'll get to him in just a minute, but first, let's get the latest on Elsa. Of course, you can see the satellite here. We've got that center, really widespread showers and storms and cloud cover out from the center. This is not that a symmetric storm that you might typically think of, but you'll notice they're kind of battering Jamaica at this point, starting to see those impacts filling in across eastern portions of Cuba as well. So what is the latest on all of the stats with Elsa? Well, we've got winds at 65 miles an hour. Of course, that is tropical storm status, not moving nearly as fast as it was the past couple days. And again, this is something now interacting with land. The system is interacting with the land masses of Jamaica and Cuba and Hispaniola. So we are seeing what happens when you have that land interaction with a tropical system. They need that warm water for fuel, so the land is not what they want to be dealing with. But you know what? That's what we're getting, and that's what we're going to have for most of this trek. Dr. Postel, this current forecast taking this over Cuba and then aiming toward the Gulf Coast of Florida. Still something we have to watch closely, though, because this system could reemerge north of Cuba, and that's largely going to depend on where it ends up going, the strength of it.
Right. I think being over water longer gives it more of an opportunity to strengthen, no doubt about that. And let's have a look at an overview about where we're dealing with the Elsa right now, just south of Cuba, just north of Jamaica. I do believe the center is right about there. And the weather right now in central and southern Florida, much of Cuba and the Bahamas, is really unaffected by Elsa now. But it will change because it will be moving, Elsa, toward the north and eventually northeast. Now, the question is what about the central and western parts of the Gulf of Mexico? Are we in play there for a close encounter with Elsa? The answer is not really, because if you look at the winds aloft, I'll draw some of these in different colors here. There is kind of a northwest wind here. There's an upper trough that's still hanging out, a part of it, in the southern part of the United States. That's going to block it from getting into the western Gulf of Mexico. So really the only option for Elsa is to follow a path about like that. But that brings a lot of cities into play. Now, we think of the center moving somewhere inside of that cone, and maybe perhaps more on the western side of the cone when you look at the different models, and that's fine. And you can see that the intensity largely underneath hurricane strength. That's the expected forecast. But because this is a fairly large circulation, do expect significant weather conditions with gusty winds, maybe coastal flooding as well, all up and down the Florida East Coast, Georgia, South Carolina as well. So Key West is one of the first places in the United States likely to see signs of Tropical Storm Elsa. And that's where we find the Weather Channel's Paul Goodlow. Paul, tell us what the weather is now, actually. Looks pretty good.
Right now, it's a gorgeous morning here on the 4th of July here. Take a look at the ocean. We look this way, and not many waves. And also, by the way, there's a Coast Guard cutter heading out there. This direction, right down the end of this pier, that's south. So say Cuba is roughly about 90, 100 miles in that direction. But right now it's pretty quiet, and people here vacationing with their families, perhaps just, trying to enjoy parts of the 4th of July, so they're enjoying it right now. But we are under a tropical storm watch for the Middle Keys, Lower Keys, out towards the Dry Tortugas, which is a little farther on towards the west here. And the timing of this, as Elsa starts moving past Cuba, is we'll start seeing some impacts throughout the day tomorrow. 4th of July, great if you're prepared, if you're vacationing. Just follow whatever your hotel, resort, or Airbnb is telling you, because they've been through these things before. And by the way, the last time we had a tropical storm make landfall in the Keys was July of 2010. We've had hurricanes make landfall. Last time tropical storm in this month was 2010. The path of this brings that center late Monday into Tuesday morning, passing by here. But the impacts, the winds, you can see this graphic, we'll start seeing the impacts starting throughout the day on, say, Monday afternoon into Monday evening, and overnight. The weather conditions continue to go downhill before slow improvement as we head into the day on really late Tuesday into Wednesday here. So once we're in the thick of this, we're in this for at least 36 hours here, but we'll keep you updated on the Weather Channel.
Well, for millions of Americans, the long, hot holiday weekend serves as an excellent excuse to head out to the nearest body of water. But accidents can happen if you aren't careful for both experienced and novice boaters. Jim Emmons is the executive director of the Water Sports Foundation and joins us live this morning to share some expert tips on how to stay safe while having fun. Jim, thanks so much for being with us. Now, I want to start with, before cruising away, what are some of the first things I need to do to prepare for my day on the water?
Well, thank you so much for having us on your show, Felicia. And, boating is so important in America. And with the recent numbers that came out last year, more accidents to 2020 from the pandemic, it's important that we get out in front of these folks and remind them there are a few things they can do to be safe, and we can bring accidents and fatalities down back to levels that we had pre-pandemic. But to answer your question, the things to do are to do a dry land check, make sure your boat is secure, make sure your boat has all of its safety equipment, including U.S. Coast Guard approved life jackets for all the members of your crew. You're going to need all of your carriage equipment, which includes a throw cushion, signaling device, flares, all sorts of things you can find on U.S. Coast Guard auxiliary website. But the main thing is, once you get out to the water, it is to avoid the alcohol. Here it is on 4th of July Day weekend, and people want to go out and they want to have fun, but we try to tell people that they should designate a sober skipper, just like a designated driver on a car, that someone's going to avoid the alcohol and get everyone back home safely.
So let's talk about the importance of filing a float plan. What info should you share with those who are joining your boat as well?
Well, float plans are critical, and it's simply just telling someone in your friends or family circle when you plan to leave, where you plan to go, how long you're going to be gone, and when you plan to be back. And, anyone that's received that float plan can monitor and notice, if you're not back by the time you're supposed to be, then it might be time to get the authorities to start looking. And I can tell you on dozens of occasions where a float plan has saved someone. So it's a critically important step. People tend to overlook it, but we are doing our best to make boaters more aware of this step and make them pick up and use a float plan as they go forward.
Yeah, and I think an important thing that sometimes people don't realize, depending on where you are, you might not have cell service out on the water, so it's good to let people know in advance. So if you do happen to be meeting up with other boating friends, I've seen this many times, lots of boats in a small area, how do you navigate a crowded situation like that?
Well, that's a good question. Coming up on a flotilla and trying to raft up with friends it's a lot of fun. If you've ever done it, it's just a really good time to sort of drift together or anchor off together and enjoy the water, enjoy the sunshine. But the things we tell people is, as you come to the raft, to come in slowly. Make sure all of your passengers have their arms and their feet inside the boat. Everyone should be seated in a manufacturer's designated seat. Again, everyone should be wearing their life jacket, their Coast Guard approved life jacket. And then bring your fenders out on the outside of your boat and gently, very slowly, gently slide into a spot where you can tie off. And then to do the same thing when you're departing is just to do those steps backward. But the one thing with that one is to make sure you never start the motor or the engine with people in the water. We want to make sure everybody's in the boat before you start the motor.
Yeah, that can turn what has been an awesome day into a bad day really quickly. Jim, great tips for everyone trying to get out there on the water and celebrate the holiday. That's Jim Emmons, the Executive Director of the Water Sports Foundation. Thanks so much for those tips, and happy 4th of July.
Well, Felicia, you know, wicked, crazy lightning and flooding downpours really hammered parts of West Texas yesterday. 1 3/4 of an inch of rain for Midland, Odessa region. Saturday, thunderstorms really very prominently displayed here by these lightning strikes. A lot of what's called CG, cloud ground lightning strikes all over the high plains. The Caprock, Llano Estacado part of Texas. I love Texas. Great chasing weather. Also, you got to be careful with the lightning. Very dangerous, of course. Let's talk about the chances for thunderstorms today, because in the forecast, we've got more of that across parts of the plains, the high plains in particular. And if you look at this is a great symbol, weekend recharge. That tells you our show right now is awesome. But you know what? You know, it's also really cool. That right there. How about that? We got a lot of water vapor imagery showing you the motion in the atmosphere from west to east. And the flare-up last night of thunderstorms in Texas, in New Mexico, and Colorado. I think today is going to be pretty similar. We're not really dealing with a dynamic system coming in and initiating a lot of severe weather, but we'll see sort of that diurnal variation. Lots of thunderstorms popping up over the Rockies and the high plains during the late afternoon, and then moving onward overnight. Overall, the chances for severe weather today do extend across parts of Texas, all the way up into parts of even, how about that? The great state of Minnesota getting in on some of that action. There's a frontal zone up that way, a little bit more concentrated region maybe. But if you look at the radar, watch this. Not a whole lot of activity, but where we do see some, again, flaring up on the high plains of Colorado and in the mountains, and then rolling southeastward again across parts of northern Texas. Amarillo included, heads up. Big storms this evening and overnight. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Weekend Recharge. Happy July 4th. Happy birthday, America. Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodell live in Key West, Florida here, where the Atlantic Ocean behind me is pretty calm right now. Some folks out there kayaking. See a Coast Guard boat a little farther out there. Other folks paddleboarding. That's because we're not really seeing any impacts right now. Don't really expect to see any impacts from Elsa until we head, say, tomorrow this time, and then into the afternoon and evening hours, we start seeing the clouds come by. We are under a tropical storm watch, but people who have never been here are like, oh, well, it's a beautiful weather, but often it's very nice weather, sometimes very hot weather. I think Miami could be in the mid to upper 90s again today, because ahead of these systems usually have kind of sinking air and clearing skies before the weather really goes downhill. I want to bring in Dr. Greg Postel to talk about this, because Dr. Postel, the storm has slowed down, which theoretically should give it a chance to organize compared to the center kind of outrunning the convection yesterday. But it's really not looking as healthy as it could, perhaps on the textbook. So let's talk about this in conditions that also ahead of Elsa, which could really limit how organized this thing could be as it approaches the Keys.
There's a lot of things that go into the strengthening or weakening of a tropical cyclone. Paul, you're exactly right about that. And it is not clear right now that Elsa really has its act together. I just looked at the most recent pass from the hurricane hunters, keeping the pressure at 1,011 millibars. And so it's not strengthening this morning. But I do want to talk about the impacts going forward. And I want to show you that where we think the rain and storms will be going into, say, tomorrow morning or midday tomorrow with the close encounter with Elsa. We're not going to have to be anywhere near the center in order to get significant impacts. We've talked about that. Let's move this forecast forward. And we can show you that those lines right there, that cone, that's the outline of the cone, suggesting where the center of Elsa is going to be. But look, we are going to likely be dealing with tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, early Tuesday morning, with a pretty stormy time of it, even on the east coast of Florida and in the Bahamas. There are going to be some sustained onshore winds here, perhaps over 20 miles per hour, and gusts quite a bit higher than that. So it is going to be a very stormy time of it, I believe, for Florida, given the look that Elsa has right now, with lots of thunderstorms spread far and wide. So just because your center, or the cone is not over you, or the center of circulation may indeed remain way out offshore in the Gulf of Mexico, we're going to be dealing with showers and thunderstorms very likely over much of Florida going into Wednesday even, and then farther north from there along the, let's say, Georgia coast, the South Carolina coast, and the North Carolina coast. With that onshore wind, coastal flooding could be an issue. Heavy rain, thunderstorms, gusty winds. How gusty are those winds going to be? Well, we don't know for sure yet, but when you look at the models, the consensus is, and this is now going out in time, each one of these lines is a different forecast from a different model, and they, for the most part, the consensus is keeping it at tropical storm strength. The hurricane force winds in the models are not really showing up in Elsa's future, so maybe that's a good sign. Felicia, back to you.
The finale of the big fireworks celebration last night in Iowa City. The display got underway at the very end of the Iowa City Jazz Festival. Many cities across the country holding their fireworks displays on Saturday, but of course, many more fireworks planned for tonight. Beautiful sight there. Always nice when you can kind of get out there and celebrate with friends and family in a safe way. Your forecast for today, again, a lot of the same places that saw rain yesterday. We'll see it again today. Much of the Gulf Coast, the I-10 corridor, some scattered storms from Houston through Jacksonville and Miami. But again, beautiful for places like Kansas City, Atlanta, D.C. As we look at the northern tier, it is a bit above average. Places like Minneapolis and Billings in the mid to upper 90s. So that is going to be feeling hot out there. Bald Eagle, Pennsylvania, your forecast for today. Upper 70s, you're falling into the upper 60s, but absolutely beautiful. You can't complain about that forecast, right, for your 4th of July. Freedom, Oklahoma, you'll be in the upper 80s, a mix of sun and clouds today, so the weather also looking wonderful. And Justice, West Virginia, again, we've got some beautiful looking forecasts for much of the country for your 4th of July. Lower 80s for your evening if you're making plans for the second part of your day. Well, much more ahead on Weekend Recharge. Americans have been crowding into the country's most popular national parks this summer, but there are a number of beautiful parks where the crowds aren't anywhere as bad. We're going to show you where, so stick around for that. That's all coming up.
Some of the pictures already from Elsa's impact as it moved, is still moving through the Caribbean. Good Sunday morning. Happy 4th of July and welcome to Weekend Recharge. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow, live from Key West, Florida. And for the first time this year, the Keys, specifically the Middle Keys, Lower Keys, and Key West, under a tropical storm watch because of Elsa here. Joining me in the studio is meteorologist Felicia Combs and storm specialist Dr. Rick Bostell. We'll get to them momentarily, but here's the path for what's going on with Elsa here. The center point moves across Cuba as we head throughout today. Then tomorrow, it emerges off Cuba and heads on towards the Lower Keys, the Dry Tortugas, and eventually on towards southwestern Florida. That's the center point, but impacts will be felt well outside that cone area. Yeah, Miami, you're not in the cone, but you'll have impacts. You are definitely vulnerable to coastal push of water. We saw that years ago with Hurricane Irma, massive flooding in downtown Miami, coastal Miami as well. But the impacts you see with the cone stretching through the southeast, the Carolinas, Mid-Atlantic, even the northeast. So we'll have impacts thousands of miles from where I'm standing here as we head into this coming week. But more on that momentarily. But today's also July 4th. From coast to coast, we're celebrating our nation's birthday. And let's say good morning to Felicia, who has a kind of a snapshot of our forecast from coast to coast. Good morning, Felicia.
Good morning, Paul. I'll tell you, the weather there in Key West looks really great right now. And for a lot of the country, that's going to be the story. But for some of us, we're going to be dodging those raindrops. So let's break it down. Here's the thing. If you had rain in the forecast yesterday and storms, you'll likely have it today because our rain maker, that low pressure system spinning up here near New England, now around Maine, and that stalled frontal boundary that's been hanging out around the Gulf Coast, well, many of those are still in place. So a lot of the same places that saw some rain yesterday, well, you have that in the forecast again today. A lot of the places that were beautiful yesterday under this pocket of high pressure from Atlanta up through Memphis, St. Louis, you're going to have beautiful weather again today. We do have that risk for some severe thunderstorms as we look back toward the panhandle of Texas. Could have some gusty winds, maybe some hail with that as well. Now, in terms of temperatures, it's going to be very pleasant under that high pressure. We are going to see above average temperatures, though, as you look toward the northern tier. Record highs possible for places like Bismarck and still very hot in the Pacific Northwest. Well, an intense scene spotted in the Dominican Republic as Elsa sent massive waves crashing along this coastal highway. This video was captured Saturday in Santo Domingo as the storm unleashed gusty winds across the region. So, Paul, of course, this is what we're keeping an eye on as we look at the forecast for Elsa. Of course, earlier, Elsa a little bit stronger, but nonetheless, still a system that we're going to have to really keep an eye on because of the rain and the wind and the impacts even outside of that cone.
We do, and as you mentioned earlier, Felicia, it is deceptively beautiful and calm out here right now. Take a look. You got kayakers, even a paddleboarder. And by the way, this isn't a bay. This is the Atlantic Ocean. As you look down the pier by about 90, 100 miles, it's Cuba. So, yeah, look how calm it is right now. That's because Elsa is on the other side of Cuba. And we don't quite know what will emerge as Elsa comes across Cuba, perhaps a very weakened core of Elsa, and we'll welcome that for sure. We'll welcome just some rain, some thunderstorm type winds, and it's in and out. But the concern is it could bring much more. And notoriously, our track forecasts from the National Hurricane Center have been pretty and fairly accurate. It's the intensity that sometimes fluctuates. So right now the forecast is for a tropical storm to come through the Keys or perhaps brush by or just west of us here in Key West, and then approach southwestern Florida. But it could possibly still become a hurricane, but right now we're expecting a tropical storm. Impacts today, barely any, except perhaps people preparing as they should. But weather starts going downhill as the sun comes up tomorrow. Probably some high clouds streaming in, maybe a breeze or two, and then the rain comes in as we get into the afternoon hours. As someone asked me earlier, will a 3 o'clock flight be okay? And yeah, you can probably get out of a 3 o'clock flight. Anything after that might be canceled or delayed, but I also told them you might want to keep an eye on that flight as well. They're urging people to enjoy the 4th, but perhaps leave early on the 5th because there's only one road in and out of the Keys. And again, we're under a tropical storm watch here. Wouldn't be surprised to see these upgraded throughout the day to a tropical storm warning, as we do expect tropical storm conditions here. The weather should start slowly improving late Tuesday into Wednesday here, but this system isn't going to stop here in the Keys. It has a long way to go across the southeastern U.S. and eventually bringing impacts in the northeast as well. Maybe just some clouds or gusty winds, but we don't know that yet because we don't know what's going to emerge off of Cuba. Let's bring in Dr. Greg Postel, who's been studying this and been watching this for a while. And Dr. Postel, this system was hauling. We're talking, 20, 30 miles per hour. Now it's slowing down to 15, 17 miles per hour. What does that mean in terms of the possibility for this thing to organize? And also, what does it look like right now?
Well, that might give it some opportunity to strengthen, unlike yesterday. If it slows down, perhaps the vortex in the vertical can get more aligned, and that would tend to give it better opportunity to strengthen. That's a lot of fancy talk, but we haven't seen that yet, Paul, and I'll explain what the hurricane hunters are finding right now as they're slicing and dicing their way through Tropical Storm Elsa. In the big picture, there it is. I mean, we are really geographically a long way from seeing any kind of impacts or bad weather from it in Florida, all the way down to the Keys. The weather's great today. There is a frontal zone in the northern part of the state, but that's unrelated to Elsa. We're at least a day away temporally from seeing some of the impacts. So today, 4th of July, over much of Florida, don't worry about Elsa, the impacts yet, but they will be coming eventually. And they may be spread out not just over the central and western part of the state of Florida. They may extend to the East Coast and then up and down the East Coast of the United States beyond that, because if you look at the winds surrounding Elsa, they may not be super strong near the middle, but there's a lot of wind that is over 25 miles per hour, sustained wind, at least according to the models, that extends outward hundreds of miles. And have a look at this. Gitmo now, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, gusting to 51 miles per hour. Just a little while ago, gusting over 55 miles per hour. And that's some distance away from the center, which is right about there over water, just north of Kingston, Jamaica. So this is a storm that is trying to get better organized, I think, looking at some of the convective trends in it. But the hurricane hunters, in their most recent pass right through there, found that the pressure was still only 1,011 millibars. That's not high, or excuse me, not low on your home barometer even. That's about average pressure that you would see on any given day. But the winds are fairly strong, that they're finding somewhere in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range, Felicia, on estimate from their instrumentation there. And we'll indeed have to wait and see as this moves over water, Felicia, in this area south of Cuba. If it does get its act together, there is some room for strengthening, and we'll be watching it closely.
Watching that, of course, and we want to get you caught up to speed on what we know about Elsa. Thanks, Dr. Postel. Right now, more than 55,000 are under tropical storm alerts. Florida's governor issued a state of emergency for 15 counties ahead of the storm this weekend. Demolition preps are underway in Surfside at the site of that collapsed condo in advance of Elsa's approach to South Florida. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, at least 3 people have died as a result of the storm, and there are more than 740 reports of structural damage in Barbados. So, Dr. Postel, you were just talking about those passes of the hurricane hunters, some really valuable data coming out of that, of course. And I think as much as we'd like to see that storm weakening, it's still one of those things where you kind of hate to see it a little bit, because then people start to let their guard down. And we still don't exactly know what we're going to have once this emerges north of Cuba.
Right. Or even before it gets to Cuba, there's some room for strengthening today, depending on the convective trends in its interior and how long they last. Felicia, that's a really good point. It will weaken a little bit, we think, eventually when it crosses Cuba, let's say tonight, and then have more chance to strengthen once again. So don't let your guard down. Felicia's exactly right. It is a tropical storm, and certainly even now carrying with it significant weather impacts. So let's move through this part of the satellite picture to show you again, just roughly for context, that's where Elsa is right now. But where's it going? Let's look at the winds aloft to give you an idea of that, because what we're seeing is there is a wind aloft here out of the north over much of the southern United States and the northern Gulf of Mexico. That's essentially going to block Elsa from getting anywhere near the central or western part of the Gulf, I think. So we're looking pretty good. If you have concerns in Texas or Louisiana, it sure looks like Elsa's going to be well east of those regions. And in fact, that's why the cone is shaped like it is. Those steering currents really aren't going to allow Elsa much wiggle room to the west. But as it moves northward, if the center or the core of it, whatever shape it's going to be, we don't know, whatever shape it's going to be in at that point, there could be some room for strengthening over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So this is the best estimate from the Hurricane Center, dealing with a tropical storm. But again, it could be a little bit stronger, we'll see. And likely, because of the way the system is organized now, it will probably still be very impactful on the east side of the cone or even outside of the cone by a long distance. I do expect an onshore southeasterly wind to provide potentially coastal flooding and really gusty winds that maybe could do some damage on the east coast of Florida. So while the center may be well to the west, like some of the models suggest, well away from that, over 100 miles, we may be dealing with a pretty robust southeast onshore wind with coastal flooding all the way from the Bahamas, Miami, up and down the east coast of Florida into the Carolinas and Georgia as well, Felicia.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. And meanwhile, summer downpours are triggering street flooding in major Gulf Coast cities like Houston. You can see that here yesterday. And then, of course, we also have Tampa, that street flooding there. Nearly 2 inches of rain in Houston Saturday, while parts of Tampa Bay got doused with 3.5 inches. We've got a stalled front that's going to help trigger more thunderstorms for Houston, while Elsa brings heavy rain to Tampa as we move through the week. So let's break it down for you, because what is happening is an abundance of tropical moisture even out ahead of our next tropical system. So any one of these storms can put down some really heavy rain, and that is what we're going to be seeing. So let's talk about where we've got the rain out there this morning. St. Augustine, has been a soaking morning for you. We've got those showers beginning to build into the I-4 corridor. Cedar Key, you've had a steady stream of showers. Now, a lot of the heavier rain is just offshore over the Gulf, and that's where we have our front hanging out currently. But as it bobbles north and south, you'll start to see some of these showers and storms filling in there along and just south of that I-10 corridor. Apalachicola, you're getting some rain right now. And as we look at Texas, you can see the general trajectory here. We've got the showers moving kind of from that 35 corridor down toward the 45 corridor. So Waco to Austin, you're going to run into some rain. San Antonio, a bit of a showery morning for you. And as this front continues to hang out in the same areas, well, it's going to continue to be the focal point for our showers and storms. We also have this abundant moisture in place, and Elsa is going to help to transport even more of that moisture across Florida. So an increasing chance for rain and storms over the next couple days for many of the same areas that have been already seeing them. I'm sorry, guys, you got to plan around it. The good news is it's not going to be a washout for your 4th of July, but there are going to be rounds of rain in your forecast, so you're going to have to plan accordingly. We don't fix it tomorrow either. We've still got showers and storms in the forecast, and this is for many areas that don't need any rain. By Tuesday, again, those showers and storms scattered across the Gulf Coast. And, you know, one of the things that's going to impact where we see most of these showers and storms, that is exactly where Elsa ends up tracking. One thing for sure, we do have the Keys in the cone currently, and that's where we find our own Paul Goodlow. Paul, I have to admit, right now, I'm jealous of the weather you have.
Yeah, jealous, especially if you're under an umbrella. I'm not. I'm actually in the sun because it looks better on TV versus being in the shade, although it's much cooler in the shade. And even temperatures are taking the shade. You know that, Felicia. But I tell you what, it's going to be a gorgeous 4th of July up and down the Keys, across South Florida as well. But it's definitely going to be a warm one as well. In fact, we talked to a visitor here about what he's worried about on this 4th of July.
What is your biggest worry for Tropical Storm Elsa?
Not being able to get back to New York. But I mean, it could be worse. You could be stuck in Key West.
So New York just had a ton of heat. How are you dealing with the heat down here?
It's not as bad. New York, we at least get a breeze here. New York was very still for a little bit, but other than that, it's okay. We're still sweating. Got to change the shirt a few times.
I was actually in New York earlier this week at Coney Island, and now I'm here at Key West, and the temperature is about the same. Humidity is a little bit higher than Coney Island, but yeah, New York is coming down off their heat wave. They're about 20 degrees colder for their July 4th, but comfortably in the 70s here. We're going to be in the low 90s. You head towards, say, Miami. They could be in the mid to upper 90s, which is very warm for this time of the year. But that's what happens when you have a hurricane or a tropical storm in the tropics. You usually have descending air ahead of it, high pressure, and that's going to heat us up here again. It's also not even windy at all. It's barely a ripple, I would say. 1 foot might be an overestimate of how big even some of the swells are out here. We saw people paddleboarding and even kayaking here. This is definitely the calm before the storm. The weather will be going downhill tomorrow, and it could be going downhill rapidly. So when we talk to people with the county here, they're saying, hey, enjoy your 4th, but on the 5th, if you are leaving, leave early, because there's only one road in and out of the Keys. And by the way, we are under a tropical storm watch, probably going to be upgraded to a warning pretty soon as well. Impacts arrive as we head throughout the afternoon on your Monday, and then perhaps the closest pass of the center of Elsa will be perhaps late night Monday into early Tuesday, and then it starts approaching the southwest Florida coast and also even up towards Tampa. There's impact there on the west coast of Florida, and then eventually it'll start moving into the southeast, Carolinas, mid-Atlantic as well as we head into this coming week. So what happens in the tropics will not stay in the tropics, but in terms of impacts here in the U.S., we'll start feeling those here in Key West as we head throughout the 5th of July.
Stay tuned to get a...
The hurricane hunters are keeping busy this weekend, keeping tabs on Tropical Storm Elsa. This flight yesterday evening, you can see the sun setting in the background. Got a couple of layers of cloud in there. They reported, the hurricane hunters did, that Elsa weakened slightly and slowed down a little bit from its torrid pace across the Caribbean. It was moving almost 30 miles per hour yesterday, and now it's about half that, somewhere around 15 miles per hour on a northwesterly path. The center's over water. It is north of Jamaica, south of Cuba, on a steady path for a few more hours over a marine environment. So we'll see if indeed it does have an opportunity to strengthen with not a whole lot of impacts from the nearby land yet. But there it is right now in context. There is Elsa. And we're seeing the weather over much of Florida completely unaffected by Elsa today. So we've got a frontal zone, of course, across parts of the northern state of Florida. That's unrelated to Elsa. But the weather elsewhere, even in parts of Cuba, western Cuba, is pretty good. But the winds are gusty in eastern Cuba. 51 gusting to it is at Guantanamo Bay. And elsewhere surrounding that, it's a pretty broad wind field. Again, with the center about there, or maybe just north of there, somewhere in here, we are seeing the extension of 20+ mile per hour winds on its east side going out hundreds of miles. That means a lot because that tells us, well, where the center, let's say, eventually goes, you might find some pretty strong winds a few hundred miles away on its eastern flank. Something to consider. But have a look at this. Just in the last hour, it seems like there's a new flare-up of thunderstorm activity not that far from the center. The hurricane hunters are in there right now, and in their most recent pass through that worst weather, they still found that the pressures were reasonably high, 1,011 millibars. That is actually not at all low on your home barometer. That is about an average pressure globally. So we're not seeing the pressure respond yet. But if those thunderstorms in the middle, right in there, continue and remain durable, they could latch on to something and initiate an intensification. Right now, we've seen some winds, according to the hurricane hunters, somewhere around 60 miles per hour on that inbound route toward that area of 1011 millibar, the lowest pressure. But we'll see. They're about ready to fleece you to make another pass through that. And over time, maybe we'll see the pressure come down a little bit and the winds come up a little bit if indeed the convection holds on longer than a few hours.
Something to watch very closely there. Thank you so much. Well, there's concern today that lightning could start even more fires in Western Canada. Tuesday, temperatures reached a record-shattering 121 degrees in the town of Lytton. The next day, a fire erupted and destroyed most of the town, killing 2 people. Such a terrible story. Right now, there are more than 170 fires burning in British Columbia. And sunshine breaking out over St. Cloud, Minnesota today. They're expecting another scorcher, expecting a high of 97, which would tie the all-time record for the day set back in 2012. The heat could trigger the formation of thunderstorms later in the day. Of course, you get that heat, you get that vertical motion in the atmosphere. Before you know it, you have some thunderstorms. The problem with the thunderstorms that we see out west, particularly this time of year, is you have the thunderstorms, but you still have some dry air in place as well. So sometimes you're not even getting that rain to reach the ground where you get the lightning strikes, and then you get these wildfires. So here's what we're looking at. The active wildfires currently 47. That is the wildfires greater than 100 acres. You can see there more than 640,000 acres within those active wildfires currently. Now, the rainfall total forecast, a little bit of that monsoonal rain going on across portions of the Four Corners region, but you'll notice especially where we really need it, California, up through Oregon, Nevada, even western portions of Arizona, not getting that rain that we need in the next 7 days. Here are some of the temperatures. Look at this. This just adds insult to injury, really. Triple digits in Salt Lake City. Same thing in Vegas as you look up toward Boise, nearing that 100-degree mark. 86 in Portland might not sound hot, but that is above average for this time of year. This has been a prolonged period of dangerous heat for this part of the country. The Pacific Northwest still seeing some of those heat advisories and excessive heat warnings as you look toward eastern Montana here. We've got widespread temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above average. And part of the problem is that it's been so hot for so long, and a lot of these homes here just do not have central AC. Temperatures through the early part of the week in the 90s and hundreds once again. Our coverage of Tropical Storm Elsa continues. Meteorologist Paul Goodlow is live in Key West as preparations get underway. Hey, Paul.
Yeah, preparations are also underway for the fireworks show they're going to have here in Key West later on tonight. That should go off without a hitch. We don't expect any strong gusty winds tonight at all, but tomorrow the weather goes downhill, so now it's time to prepare. If you're visiting the Keys, well, just ask the manager of the property you're staying in to make sure that you know what to do when a tropical storm approaches.
Makita's LX.
Cuba and Jamaica with rain and wind as it heads toward Florida. You can see that here. Our Paul Goodlow is live in Key West. We're going to get to him in just a minute. But first, let's get a look at the latest on Elsa, because all eyes on this storm at this moment, of course, bringing those impacts that we've been feeling across the Caribbean now, absolutely lashing Jamaica and beginning to feel those impacts as we look toward the eastern portions of Cuba, the western portions of Hispaniola, Haiti, really feeling those impacts. Currently winds at 65 miles per hour, so that is tropical storm status, about 45 miles east-northeast of Kingston, Jamaica. Now you'll notice there that it's certainly not a well-organized looking storm. It's not what you think of when you typically think that textbook tropical storm, but it is still posing a lot of threats. We're talking about heavy rain could lead to mudslides and landslides as well. Power outages, of course, flooding is going to be an issue, especially as this has slowed down quite a bit. You can see the cone here by Tuesday early morning there, emerging toward the Keys and then moving across the state of Florida as we head through Wednesday. We've got tropical storm watches and tropical storm warnings in place across portions of Cuba and Jamaica and even portions of Haiti as well. So Dr. Postel, there is still a wait and see game that we've got going on here. It's largely going to depend on how this storm emerges, intact or not intact, as it becomes north of Cuba.
Yeah, those are all really good points, Felicia, and it will cross Cuba likely later on today or tonight, and that will disrupt the circulation somewhat, but to what extent, we don't know exactly yet. And once it does get, let's say, out over, parts of the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, we could see some opportunity to strengthen once again over that marine environment. But right now, for reference, there is Elsa. There's some rain over North Florida and the northern Gulf of Mexico. This stuff is not related at all to Elsa. The weather, in fact, over much of the rest of Florida is great, as it is in the Bahamas. Enjoy the 4th of July. And looking at where Elsa will be going down the line, well, I want to look at the steering patterns aloft, because the winds aloft will help us determine where it may go. And their shape right now tells us really the central and western Gulf of Mexico are not in play. And that is why the cone looks the way it does, with remarkable consistency, I might add. Great job by the Hurricane Center for not moving this cone around very much, despite some fluctuations in some of the guidance. And you can see that we do expect the center of Elsa to very likely pass near or just offshore of Florida early in the week and then move northward from there. But remember, the impacts will be spread far and wide and include much of the eastern coast of Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. How about the intensity? Well, the guidance right now still remains bearish. Each one of these lines represents a forecast from a different model going out in time, and the consensus is this remains at tropical storm strength throughout the duration. But the impacts will be notable. Have a look at this. We are going to watch the impacts begin tomorrow morning in South Florida. There's the cone that we mentioned, with the center likely inside of that somewhere. But the east coast of Florida throughout Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, as well as Georgia and the Carolinas, will be dealing with heavy rain, gusty winds as well, and potentially coastal flooding. So this is going to be a long duration event for all of us all the way through midweek. Now, Key West is only one of those places that is likely to see signs of Tropical Storm Elsa, and perhaps the first. And that's where we find the Weather Channel's Paul Goodlow. Paul.
Hey there, Dr. Postel, and you mentioned great points here in terms of the impacts coming here to the U.S., including the Keys tomorrow. So today, a great day, a gorgeous day to enjoy the 4th, but we're also concerned not only across the Keys, but also South Florida, Miami. You are not in the cone, but as that storm approaches, you got that counterclockwise push of water, so an ocean rise. Coastal flooding is something we're definitely concerned about across South Florida. Even though you might not see the heavy rain or the winds, you have to watch out if you're by the ocean. Here in the Keys, of course, we're always vulnerable because there's only one road in and out. We're under a tropical storm watch for the middle and lower Keys here. They're urging people, if you are having plans to leave on Monday, leave earlier, because it's maybe a A 2+ hour drive off the island in normal conditions, or I should say off the Keys in normal conditions. And the timing is the weather is coming this way as hopefully people are leaving the Keys if they plan to leave tomorrow. If they don't plan to leave, well, just hunker down and ride this one out. Weather will be improving as we head later into this coming week.
Curiosity.
Blazing heat will be the big story this 4th of July holiday weekend. Despite temperatures at or near 100 degrees, Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona will be a popular destination as Americans get into the out there to relax and celebrate America's 245th birthday. This beautiful park was the 6th most visited national park last year, welcoming, get this, 2.9 million visitors. Well, many of our national parks are seeing a huge surge in visitors this summer as virus-weary Americans head back out on vacation again. But you can declare your independence from crowds this holiday weekend by visiting some hidden jewels. We're joined live now by Will Pattis, co-founder of More Than Just Parks. Will, thanks for being with us this morning. I want to start with, there are parks people can visit this weekend while avoiding some of those huge crowds we're seeing. Please tell us where those are, and we'll keep it a secret, I promise.
Yeah, happy 4th of July to you. So we're talking about parks like Capitol Reef National Park in Utah, which is a breathtaking national park, has all the same scenery as like Zion, but none of the crowds. North Cascades National Park in Washington, you have Mount Rainier, you have Olympic, which are both very crowded, but North Cascades, there's hardly anybody there. You're talking about Redwood National Park in California and also Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota, where you can see just amazing waterways with none of the visitors.
That sounds like a plan. Now, the national parks aren't the only places to go to get the outside weather of summer. Tell us about some of the best kept secrets that might be even less crowded.
Yeah, so my favorite places to go lately because of the crowds are the national forests, which you can find national forests right next to really popular national parks without any of the visitors. You're talking like 1/10, 1/20th of the visitors. Look at Black Hills National Forest right next to Mount Rushmore in the Badlands. Look at the Flathead National Forest in Montana, which is right next to Glacier National Park. The Dixie National Forest, which touches on all of those Utah national parks, has spectacular scenery and nobody is there. And also I think I mentioned the Flathead National Forest as well. So some really great spots.
Yeah, those sound awesome. Now, here's another thing, though. With the record temperatures being set across the West, wildfire season just beginning, what are some tips for people to make sure they're doing their part to prevent the fires?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially on a day like today. So go to these places, enjoy them, but do not bring fireworks. Do not start fires today in these parks. Really look at those fire guidelines because we are experiencing extremely dry conditions on public lands, especially. Public lands are a little bit understaffed right now, and so if you are there, enjoy fireworks shows where they are, but do not start any sort of fires because it is very dangerous right now.
Yeah, it can spread very quickly. Kind of quickly, Will, with such a high visitation in the parks, one of the worries right now is damage to these special places. What can visitors do to make sure they're keeping these national treasures pristine?
Yeah, this is another great question. I would recommend to folks to pack out your trash. Don't put it in the park trash cans or forest trash cans because that's pretty difficult for them to kind of pack out. Also, stay on maintained trails. Follow Leave No Trace guidelines. Don't start your own trails in most of these places unless there's clear guidelines because it can really damage fragile ecosystems. And, you know, again, just enjoy these places for all of us.
Yeah, we'd love to keep them as pristine as possible and keep them around for generations. Will, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Some great tips. That's Will Pattis of More Than Just Parks. And of course, if you're headed out, make sure you are staying safe. Have a happy 4th of July. Dr. Postel, we've got to talk about some crazy weather, though.
Wicked crazy weather. Lightning and flooding downpours. Yesterday over Texas, strong summer thunderstorms moved through. We had 1 3/4 of an inch of rain in Midland, Odessa in the region on Saturday, West Texas, and more thunderstorms are going to be likely again in the picture tonight. But have a look at this. I mean, this is quite striking. No pun intended, actually pun intended. A lot of cloud ground. We call it CG, very dangerous stuff. In fact, that's probably the weather phenomenon that I'm most worried about when I go chasing is lightning. That's the one that's unpredictable and can be deadly very quickly, instantaneously practically. So what we are dealing with today is probably some more thunderstorms. Not so much right now. What we're seeing is here a loop over the last 12 hours where we saw the flare up over the high plains of thunderstorms. You can see that in this water vapor imagery over eastern Colorado and in parts of western Kansas. And then they weaken this morning. In fact, right now, I don't see a whole lot. Very little. A couple of showers over central Kansas, but not a whole lot to deal with. Definitely no severe weather in progress right now. That's good news. But later on today, we might see some. This is an area outlined by the Storm Prediction Center. An area in red here, we got a chance of seeing some severe weather all the way western Texas, southwestern Kansas, and into parts of the Arrowhead in Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. Now, the dynamics in the severe weather might be a bit more prominent near the Canadian border, given the jet stream vicinity. It'll be nearby, and that will help organize some of the storms. But we still could see some in this future radar showing up later on this afternoon and evening, again forming over the Rockies and then diving southward over the south central U.S. later on tonight. Felicia.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. Well, next on Weekend Recharge, Elsa races across the Caribbean and puts a lock on Florida. Will the tropical storm drown out Sunshine State fireworks tonight? We're timing it out.
Real fruit.
Welcome back to Weekend Recharge. Let's have a look at the weather that we expect to be in place across much of the Bahamas and Florida beginning tomorrow early in the afternoon. Now, we have this guidance showing that rain and thunderstorms will be potentially ongoing here and there, not everywhere, across the southern half of Florida during the morning hours tomorrow. And you can see that sort of white-shaped cone. Well, that's the cone. That's the outline of the Hurricane Center's cone, moving northward during the late afternoon tomorrow and overnight. But there's going to be substantially uncomfortable weather conditions potentially on the east side, well outside of the cone. We've talked about that off and on again, and we'll see that likely continue through Tuesday. Let's just say even the center of Elsa over here. How strong it is, it doesn't matter. We're likely going to see very significant impacts along the east coast of Florida and the Bahamas, and then moving northward into Georgia, very likely late Tuesday and into early Wednesday. So let's just say Elsa's moving somewhere in that direction. Heads up for an onshore wind, potentially across parts of the southeastern U.S., bringing some coastal flooding, gusty winds as well, all the way through, well, the end of midweek, late Wednesday and into early Thursday. We're going to be watching this system very carefully. Now, what about the intensity? What if, let's just say, Elsa remains the center of it, the sort of the main interior part of it, over the Gulf of Mexico, west of Florida? Could it lead to strengthening? Yes, it could. And the models, again, a notoriously difficult time forecasting the intensity. That's the hardest part about tropical storm forecasting overall, is how strong this one is going to be. But the models are telling us a compelling story. The consensus over the entire duration, Paul, keep Elsa at tropical storm strength, no matter where it goes. Paul.
And we hope that will perhaps limit some of the impacts, certainly limit the wind and maybe the damage as well, but it's still going to cause a lot of impacts, a lot of rain here, some wind, and also the coastal rise too across South Florida and the Keys. Here in Key West, it's a gorgeous July 4th. They're setting up for fireworks, a couple of piers just off where we're standing here, and should be a great night. Maybe a gentle breeze right now, a few passing clouds, but even looking at the Atlantic, it's pretty calm. This is a very calm Atlantic to know that there is a tropical storm on the other side of Cuba, which, by the way, is in that direction by about 90, 100 miles or so. And Elsa on the other side of that in the Caribbean and approaching Cuba as we head throughout this 4th here. But it will emerge overnight and tomorrow start moving this way. Right now, that center is forecast to be passing by Key West just to the west of us, kind of even perhaps west of the Dry Tortugas, which is the kind of uninhabited islands as you keep going kind of west into the Gulf or Caribbean, Florida Straits, whatever you want to call this body of water. But again, Elsa is a tropical storm. The forward speed is slowing down, which on paper could give it a time to strengthen, reorganize, but it's still not looking like a very well-organized, super strong storm at this system. And then it's approaching land. It's going to cross over land as well, as Dr. Postel talked about. There's a good chance it could weaken, good chance it could re-strengthen when it reemerges. But bottom line is we have to prepare for the worst, hopefully hope for the best as well. Weather conditions here will be going downhill as you see the center approaches throughout the day on Monday. So yeah, Sunday, fantastic day. But Monday things go downhill. And even though South Florida is not in the center point track, we're going to have impacts with that counterclockwise rotation pushing water into South Florida. So definitely a big concern. And Felicia, this is the 4th of July. While it should be a beautiful day here, a lot of communities have been celebrating the fireworks even last night, and they'll see more tonight.
Yeah, they certainly have. I've got some to show you, actually, and I promise you, the fireworks are not going that fast. Disclaimer, that would be pretty incredible, though. This is a time lapse of a firework display in Port Washington, Wisconsin. Now, if you have plans on seeing fireworks tonight in Port Washington, the weather will be absolutely perfect with mostly clear skies and temperatures in the 70s. You could really fit a lot of fireworks in if they were going that quickly, though. A lot of us are going to have beautiful weather for our 4th of July. Some of us are still going to have some rain around. But, you know, the good news is even where we have that chance for storms like, say, Houston or New Orleans, it's not going to be a complete washout of your day. You're just going to have to plan around some of those showers and storms. Still hot for the northern tier. Minneapolis, Billings well above average. Denver a bit above average for you, too. See me in Kansas City at 88 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. Hey, let's head to Justice, West Virginia, where you guys are going to be in the lower 80s, a mix of sun and clouds through your evening. Absolutely nothing weather-wise that should get in the way of enjoying those fireworks. And to Patriot, Ohio. Are you seeing a theme here? Kind of patriotic names, right? You're going to be in the mid-80s through your afternoon. By the time the sun is going down, we're going from the mid-80s to the upper 70s. Perfectly comfortable. And to America, Illinois. Got creative there, huh? Hey, America, Illinois. You got to have a lot of sunshine. You're going to be in the mid-80s. Absolutely nothing wrong with that forecast for your 4th. And to Liberty, Tennessee, where same thing, beautiful weather.
Get more out of summer with savings on appliances for every
Some of the sights already from Elsa as it's still moving on through the Caribbean. A good Sunday morning. Welcome to Weekend Recharge. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodall. Also, happy July 4th. I'm live in Key West, Florida, which we are now under a tropical storm warning. As of the updated 11 o'clock advisory, let's get right to it right now. Again, new advisory in. This is still a tropical storm, 60 miles per hour. Tropical storm Elsa moving west-northwest at 13 miles per hour, roughly about 50 miles north of Kingston, Jamaica there, as they're definitely getting impacts, also impacts across parts of eastern Cuba. The Keys, the middle Keys, lower Keys, right on through the Dry Tortugas, including here in Key West, now under a tropical storm warning. What does that mean? Well, we expect tropical storm conditions in this area in the next 36 hours. Your 4th of July should be like it is now, a nice, warm, beautiful day here, but things drastically change as we head on towards Monday. But look what happens after that. It comes in the Florida Straits, passes by the Keys, and approaches southwestern Florida, moves across Florida, and then also into areas of the southeast, the Carolinas, even the northeast. Yeah, New York is pretty much in Long Island, parts on that eastern side or western side of that cone there as we move into the latter part of this coming week. But immediate concerns will be as we head throughout Monday into Monday night into Tuesday morning, when we have perhaps the closest pass to the Keys and perhaps maybe even a direct hit. The last time a tropical storm hit the Keys was 2010 in the month of July. We've had other landfalls since then, but not a tropical storm in the month of July. We have much more to talk about in terms of Elsa and the impacts here across the U.S., but right now it's also the 4th of July. We have a lot of things going on across this country on this Sunday. Let's bring in Felicia with a snapshot. And by the way, Felicia, happy 4th of July.
Thanks, Paul. Same to you, although I'll say I'm a little jelly of your 4th of July weather right now. I won't be jealous later, though. So we can talk about the places that also have really great weather. Atlanta's actually one of them. That's where I am currently. Much of the southeast has beautiful weather, with the exception of the areas that have been stuck under the stalled frontal boundary. So here's the thing. What you had yesterday for your weather, a lot of us will have much of the same thing. That frontal boundary, that low pressure system still spinning here as you look up toward Maine. We've got a stalled frontal boundary stretching through the Atlantic, down across north central Florida, back into the southern plains, and a couple different things that are going on that are bringing the chance for some showers and storms across the plains as we move through today as well. Not just run-of-the-mill showers and storms, though. We could have some strong to severe storms here across portions of northern Minnesota. We're going to stretch that down through the plains. Texas getting in on that, and portions of Oklahoma. You could have some gusty winds there. Now, still above average as you look at the northern tier, still hot as we look back toward the Pacific Northwest, a bit above average for some of those places, and really pleasant for much of the southeast. A place like OKC, Atlanta, Memphis, you guys are having a beautiful 4th of July. Different story here, though. Parts of Haiti taking a battering from Tropical Storm Elsa. This is in the town of St. John, where you can see the winds whipping around those palm trees. It's not just the winds that are a concern in Haiti, but heavy rain in southern parts of the country could also trigger flash floods and mudslides. So, you know, you're having that issue, Dr. Postel, where you get so much rain on this terrain, and then you're adding another element of, you know, injury to the forecast, mudslides, landslides. So we can't stress enough that because this has slowed down, because it's that current pumping of tropical moisture, you still have those dangers you have to worry about.
Yeah, rain, flooding, coastal flooding from onshore winds. Some wind still, and that's the way it looks right now. This is probably not going to get to hurricane strength, but still the hazards are real. And thank you very much, Felicia. With that, let's have a look at the bigger picture and show where Elsa is. Tropical storm Elsa, now 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, north of Jamaica, south of Cuba. That's where the center is. But the cloud pattern extends well beyond that, as does the weather. We know that winds over 25 miles per hour, sustained winds, at least according to the modeling that we're getting, does suggest that those kind of winds extend outward hundreds of miles away, especially on the east side of the circulation. So this, again, like a lot of others, will extend the weather impacts way beyond where the center of circulation ultimately goes. But where the center of circulation ultimately goes does matter, because whether or not it's over land or water, if it's over water, it will have some opportunity to strengthen, but it's on the struggle bus right now. There's no doubt about that. As I mentioned, the winds are really not all that strong. The hurricane hunters are in there. I'll show you in a second. And we are getting some winds, generally speaking, around parts of the Caribbean in the 20 to 30 mile per hour range. Earlier at Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, we saw wind gusts over 50 miles per hour. And like I said, the winds over 25 miles per hour, sustained winds, according to the models, extend way out over the waters. So here's what we're looking at right now. You might think, okay, well, there's plenty of big thunderstorms there, right? Why is this thing not getting organized? I don't know. I don't know. There's things in the interior. I don't want to get into the weeds, but there are things in the interior that are not cooperating with one another. There's some infighting going on, despite its rather, impressive appearance in places. The convection, though, is not particularly durable. You need that thunderstorm activity to last more than a few hours before it falls apart, in order to get, some real chance at strengthening. But let me tell you what the hurricane hunters are finding. And they're finding that the surface pressures are pretty high. This 10-12 millibar reading was where there was a wind at about 10 knots or so near the surface. So it's actually perhaps a little bit lower than that. That drop zone wasn't quite in that exact center, but you get the idea. 1,012 millibars. What? Are you kidding me? With a system that looks like this? Yeah. It's just not working on the inside, and we'll try to figure that out as we go forward. But there were some pretty decent winds in the 60-mile-per-hour range in the inbound and outbound rides toward that center. Felicia.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. So we want to get you caught up to speed on what we know about Elsa right now. Tropical storm warnings are now up for parts of the Florida Keys. Florida's State Emergency Operations Center is activated and ramping up operations for the response to Elsa. Florida's governor issued a state of emergency for 15 counties ahead of the storm this weekend. And demolition preps are underway in Surfside at the site of that collapsed condo in advance of Elsa's approach to South Florida. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, at least 3 people have died as a result of the storm. So, Dr. Postel, as we know, this has already been a fatal storm. We just got the latest advisory on Elsa. And, we want to talk about what we can expect. Still a lot of wait and see as we wait to see what happens once Elsa gets past Cuba.
Right. There will be some opportunities, given everything else we've talked about, for some strengthening. If the sort of main part of Elsa stays out over water, I suppose you'd think it might have a better opportunity than it would strengthen were, say, some of that to move over land. And that's still a possibility. But for today in Central and South Florida, the weather looks pretty good. I mean, there's hardly a cloud in the sky, as let's say Tampa on south to Miami. There's a frontal zone right here, and that matters because that's going to play a role in where Elsa ultimately goes. That frontal zone at the surface and mid-altitudes is tied to an upper-level pattern with winds that are shaped like this. How about that? Those north winds are going to likely protect the central and western Gulf of Mexico from a close encounter with Elsa. The real trap door here is north and then eventually northeastward, like the Hurricane Center has been telling us now for days. So this is a very consistent path that we think will move very close to Florida, the center of it. But keep in mind, even if the center is not near you, for all of us wondering what the weather might be like in southeast Florida, Miami, and many other areas nearby, we could still see some pretty bad weather even if the center is well over 100 miles to the west. So that's something to consider. We're going to have some showers and storms and gusty winds all up and down the east coast of Florida, South Carolina, Georgia as well. But what about the intensity? Felicia was asking, is it possible that this thing, if it remained over water, could it get to hurricane strength? Yeah, it could, but the models are not particularly aggressive at any chance of that happening. It is one scenario, but a very unlikely one, it seems, given that the consensus in the models going out forward in time, each one of these lines represents a model. Look at that. They keep it under hurricane force, which is on the top side of that graph. They keep Elsa at tropical storm strength. What does that mean? I'm going to show you the weather here. Moving northward, there's the outline of the cone, the center likely passing near or even west of Key West. But look, to Tuesday, Monday night, Tuesday, we could see showers and storms and gusty winds all up and down Florida, across parts of southern Georgia, South Carolina, getting into parts of eastern North Carolina by midweek. Felicia.
And Dr. Postel, we got to talk about the other summer downpours. Thanks so much. They're triggering street flooding in major Gulf Coast cities like Houston and Tampa. Nearly 2 inches of rain in Houston Saturday, while parts of Tampa Bay, well, they got doused with 3.5 inches. A stalled front is going to help trigger more thunderstorms for Houston today, while Elsa is going to bring some heavy rain to Tampa as we move through the week. Yeah, that's not what you want to see. You don't want to be driving through that standing water. But, a lot of us are going to be dealing with more rounds and rounds of rain with that tropical moisture that we have in the forecast. So where do we have the rain right now? Well, across portions of north central Florida, St. Augustine. You guys have had quite a soggy morning, but that patch of rain is going to continue moving out. Some rain across that I-4 corridor and a bit of a wet ride as you look at 75 as well. Now, the majority of the activity is currently over the open waters of the Gulf, but because that frontal boundary is stalled here just off the Gulf Coast as it bobbles up and down, you'll continue to see these showers and storms filling in, especially along and south of that I-10 corridor. To Texas now, where we've got some rain from Waco down through San Antonio. That's going to continue kind of filling in from that 35 to that 45 corridor. Houston, eventually you're getting in on some showers and storms later on today. Can you tell where the front's hanging out? Well, we drew it on there for you, so now you can definitely tell. But you can definitely see the radar truth of where we have this front hanging out and focusing those showers and storms. Now, as we head into the early part of next week, Elsa is going to transport some more moisture north, and we still have that abundant Gulf moisture that's impacting your weather pattern along the Gulf Coast. So you're used to your afternoon bubble up thunderstorms with that diurnal heating, but we are going to see even a ramping up of that because of all the moisture we're going to have in the atmosphere. So today, some scattered storms in the forecast. Tomorrow, many of the same places have that same chance in their forecast. Destin, Mobile. You guys are all included in that. Gulfport, Biloxi, you guys have that chance for some scattered storms too as we head through Tuesday. And of course, some of us are dodging the showers and storms right now from that frontal boundary. Others are going to be dodging it from Elsa. We just got the latest update in, and we have our own Paul Goodlow. He's in Key West, Florida, where you guys now have those warnings up for the Keys, Paul.
Yeah, there was tropical storm warnings now because of Elsa, no longer warnings, the watches now. Tropical storm watch actually for the upper Keys, but middle and lower Keys, particularly here in Key West, a tropical storm warning. But as you mentioned, Felicia, it's a beautiful day today, but yeah, enjoy today because tomorrow a different story. A watch means you can see conditions tropical storm-like in 48 hours. So a warning means 36 hours, and we will definitely see drastic different weather as we head over the next 36 hours or so. By this time tomorrow, maybe some clouds, maybe a little breezier as well, but we probably won't have more of the rain until perhaps later in the day on Monday. So they're urging people, if you are leaving the Keys on Monday, the earlier you go, the better. There's one road off the Keys back to the mainland, and it can get pretty packed the deeper you go into the day as well. But we're under tropical storm warning. We still have other warnings and watches out across other islands across the Caribbean because Elsa is still on the south side of Cuba, moving just on the north side of Jamaica. They're being impacted right now, but as the center moves across, it'll start moving towards the Keys as we head on throughout the day on Monday night, Tuesday morning, and then perhaps later in the day on Tuesday approach the southwest coast of Florida before it moves across the peninsula and still impact parts of the southeast. But the impacts are going to be rapidly going downhill in terms of the weather as we head throughout the day on Monday. So don't let today's weather fool you that this is going to stay this way all week long. Tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, Tuesday morning, pretty rough weather here, but then it should improve here in the Keys, especially Key West, but other parts of the southeast will start going downhill as well. And we talked to visitors, even locals alike, about what they're doing ahead of Elsa's approach.
How are you preparing mentally and physically for the storm?
Well, after what we've kind of dealt with for everything in 2020, we're just kind of taking it easy, going day by day and just seeing what's going on. And if we need to make extra preparations, we'll make extra preparations on it.
We always prepare when there's hurricanes or storms coming. We already have the non-perishable items, the water, normal batteries, all that stuff.
Yeah, the locals, they've been through this numerous times before, so it's always good to see people are prepared. They live as close to the tropics as you can get here in the U.S. here, so they know what's going to happen. Again, beautiful day today. Tomorrow throughout the day, progressively deteriorating weather, and we'll see squally weather, unsettled weather through Tuesday, but the rest of the week looks better after that. So if you're vacationing, then hopefully it's just going to be kind of a showery day, late evening Monday into Tuesday, and then things will get better to your vacation weather as we head later on this week. And Felicia, yeah, we got still open beach chairs. You're more than welcome to come down here in Key West and enjoy us until the weather starts going downhill.
I might be. Who knows? You never know where I'm going to pop up. But you know what? We do have to talk about where you guys might be celebrating your 4th of July. So coming up on this red, white, and blue edition of Weekend Recharge, the 4th of July means fun on the water for millions of Americans. We're talking all things safety at 40 past the hour. Let's take a look at some of those 4th of July forecasts because some of us have beautiful weather like Kansas City. I'm loving it. Upper 80s there. It's a little toasty, but not bad. Definitely above average as you look at the northern tier. Billings, you should not be at 97, but you are. Stay with the Weather Channel for continuing coverage as we track Elsa, live reports, and expert analysis you won't get anywhere else from now until midnight tonight.
Don't you wish you could wave a
Around here, they say if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute.
I love to watch the waves after a storm. The storm can be long gone, but the waves just keep going.
Ask my history teacher where to go to college. He said, go where you like the weather. Best advice I've ever gotten.
Get into the out there. The Weather Channel.
The hurricane hunters are keeping busy this weekend, keeping tabs on Tropical Storm Elsa. This flight yesterday evening, you can see the sun setting in the background. It reported that Elsa weakened slightly and slowed down a lot from its torrid pace across the Caribbean. I mean, just this time yesterday, Elsa itself was moving at about 30 miles per hour. Now it's about half that, so it slowed down a lot. And sometimes that can indicate or open up a window for strengthening. But we have not seen that. We've in fact seen the opposite. We've seen a continued degradation of some of the cloud patterns, and certainly some of the interior measurements are suggesting that it is indeed even weaker than it was 6 hours ago. We're looking at it here, just to give you some frame of reference. There is Elsa, and the weather today over much of central and western Cuba is actually really nice, unaffected yet by Elsa. For most of the Bahamas, that is true as well, and central and south Florida, the 4th of July looks really nice. A frontal zone, though, over North Florida, the northern Gulf of Mexico, if you saw that rain there, I'll talk about what that means for the future of Elsa, but I'm sort of focusing on what we got right now. And that is a fairly windy system with thunderstorms scattered around the area of lowest pressure, which is actually not all that low, and I'll show you in a second. But the winds here, everywhere shaded in this background contouring, are where the winds, at least according to the models, are, we think, over 25 miles per hour, and of course, gusts higher than that. And some of these locations, you can see that is indeed the case. In parts of Haiti, we're seeing wind gusts over 40 miles per hour. Also, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, 21 miles per hour sustained wind right now, but about an hour or 2 hours ago, we were gusting at about 55 miles per hour. So there's some strong wind out there, and note that the strong wind in some places extends way over 100 miles away from where the center of circulation is, which is about right there, north, just due north of the northern coast of Jamaica. Now, the cloud pattern, you might think, well, there's a lot of big thunderstorms, and that is true. There's some here, there's some there, there's some in here, but they're kind of irregularly patterned. And while it's trying to perhaps bring some of that spin aloft into the interior, it doesn't seem to be doing so effectively. Look, during the hurricane hunter's path this way a long time ago, about an hour ago, the pressure was measured somewhere around 1,010, 1,012 millibars or so, with some winds in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range. But you'd think with a system that looks at least like this, if pressure would be lower. It's not. And that tells us the interior of Elsa is not very well organized and is on the struggle bus and will have a hard time strengthening, I think, even though it is over water, at least for the next 6 to 12 hours. Felicia.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. Let's talk about another concern today, and that's that lightning could start even more fires in western Canada. Tuesday, temperatures reached a record-shattering 121 degrees in the town of Lytton. And the next day, a fire erupted and destroyed most of the town, killing 2 people. Terrible story there. Now, right now, there are more than 170 fires burning in British Columbia. Sunshine breaking out over St. Cloud, Minnesota today. They're expecting another scorcher. A high of 97 is the forecast. That would tie the all-time record for the day set back in 2012. The heat could trigger the formation of thunderstorms later in the day, though, which is a problem for the drought-stricken West, because what happens quite often is when you have even relatively dry air in place, it doesn't have to be completely dry, you get a thunderstorm and the rain actually evaporates before it makes it to the ground, but the lightning strike makes it to the ground, and then you have a wildfire that started because of a thunderstorm. So here's what we're looking at now. 49 active wildfires, just over 640,000 acres. those are the wildfires that are being counted at 100 acres or more. We're not expecting much rain where we really need it here across California up through Oregon and Washington, Nevada, not getting in on any of that rain in the next 7 days for the most part either. Some of those monsoonal rains are kicking in across portions of the Four Corners region, but we're not seeing a ton, and the temperatures are very hot. We're talking about triple digits from Boise down through Salt Lake, Vegas, of course, hot there, and even where you see that, say, 80 some degrees in Portland might not seem like a scorcher, but that's well above average for the Pacific Northwest this time of year. So we do have those heat advisories and excessive heat warnings still lasting for portions of the PNW. This is a prolonged period of heat that does become dangerous. Well, our coverage of Tropical Storm Elsa continues. Meteorologist Paul Goodlow is live in Key West as preparations are getting underway. Hey, Paul.
Hey there, Felicia. Again, at top of this hour, we had our tropical storm watches upgraded to a tropical storm warning, meaning we're expecting tropical storm conditions in 36 hours, but not today. Beautiful 4th of July, but Elsa is lurking. We'll talk about the impacts we're expecting as we're looking at a pretty calm Atlantic. Tide is going out right now, but Elsa is on the way.
Did you know that most cars...
Search and rescue efforts have been put on hold in Surfside, Florida, as Tropical Storm Elsa threatens the Sunshine State. Demolition crews are preparing to bring down the remainder of the partially collapsed condo that officials say is at a heightened risk of collapsing due to the storm. 121 people still remain unaccounted for, and the death toll right now stands at 24. Our Justin Michaels will be reporting live from Surfside today, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Half past the hour's weekend recharge rolls on. I'm meteorologist Felicia Combs. Tropical storm Elsa lashing parts of Cuba and Jamaica with rain and wind as it heads toward Florida. Our Paul Goodlow is live in Key West. We'll get to him in just a minute. But first, let's get the latest on Elsa, as we did just get that latest update in the 11 a.m. kind of intermediate advisory there. Winds at 60 miles per hour, so they are finding Elsa weaker than the previous advisory. Currently about 50 miles north of Kingston, Jamaica. So the center of low pressure starting to pull north toward Cuba at this point. Certainly not moving as fast as it was, which is actually bad news, because the slower the storm sticks around in the same place, the more rain you're getting, the more prolonged the winds are. So you never like to see that. The latest update in terms of the Keys, you are now under a tropical storm warning. So now is the time to prepare for those tropical storm conditions. Tropical storm watches in effect for the upper Keys and for portions of Southwest Florida as well. Naples, Everglades, you guys are included in that. We're going to talk much more on what we can expect from Elsa, Dr. Postel, because, you know, we've been saying it all along, and I think sometimes people get a little antsy, but it really is a wait and see how Elsa is going to emerge north of Cuba.
Yes, we're waiting on lots of things from Elsa. We're wondering when it's going to get better organized, if at all, because right now it's quite a bit weaker than it was even 12 hours ago. We're seeing it slow down its forward speed, and sometimes that can open up a window for strengthening, but that is not at all what's happening. Elsa, just for reference, is right here, and the weather across much of Central and South Florida, not unexpectedly, is actually nice today. It's going to be quite nice, in fact, and across even parts of the Bahamas and western Cuba. But there is a frontal zone up in here in the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico and in North Florida, bringing showers and thunderstorms. And that is associated with an upper level wind pattern, sort of the remnants of an upper trough, that is bringing some winds out of the north in this part of the world. So what does that tell us? Well, it probably says that Elsa, if you're concerned in Texas or areas in Louisiana, or let's say west of Pensacola, Florida, it's going to be hard, if not darn near impossible, for Elsa to come anywhere near you because of those winds aloft. The steering patterns are likely going to direct Elsa along a path like this, where we do see in the latest cone here from the Hurricane Center, likely also remaining at tropical storm strength, even if the center remains over water. And that is reflected in the guidance. In other words, the models run many times, each one of them sometimes, and also the different models themselves are basically giving us a story. And the consensus is that going forward in time, no matter what model you look at, Elsa is probably going to remain at tropical storm strength and not become a hurricane again. So that is a pretty compelling picture that the models are telling us. There's a lot of agreement there that just doesn't have enough room, or a lot of room, to turn into more than a tropical storm. But that still matters. Tropical storms can bring a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and impact still coastal flood rises, water rises, hundreds of miles away from where the center goes, and that's reflected in this forecast that takes us through Tuesday and Wednesday with rainy and stormy times throughout the southeastern United States. Key West is one of those places that may indeed see some of the impacts first in the United States from Tropical Storm Elsa, and that's where we find the Weather Channel's Paul Goodlow. Paul.
So that's where we find our tropical storm warnings here up for the Keys now as of 11 o'clock Eastern time, and the advisory tropical storm warnings. And let's kind of go on your theme, Dr. Postel. Let's just go with the National Hurricane Forecast. What can we expect? Well, we expect weather conditions going downhill over the next 24 hours. So it's 11 o'clock Eastern time, 11:30 almost here, just past 11:30. This time tomorrow, maybe some breezy conditions, some more clouds. Can't rule out a shower or two, but then throughout the day on Monday and Monday night, Tuesday, the closest pass, so the strongest wind, heaviest rain. But these things aren't just simple points. They have weather coming in and weather going away. So weather slowly improves here in Key West as we head later in the day on Tuesday afternoon. You might see a lot more blue sky around here, but still a little breezy. But then impacts farther into the peninsula and then throughout Florida and the southeast as we head deeper into this week here. So the track is pretty much going to impact and have landfall, if not here in the Keys, southwestern Florida, as we head into Tuesday. So we do need to be preparing for worst case scenario, landfalling tropical storm in 36 hours here in the U.S.
Experience Makita's cordless outdoor power equipment. The mower cuts non-stop for up to 2 miles. Get unstoppable power without the hassles of gas. Now, get 2 extra free batteries.
Sweaty in bed for all the wrong reasons? Chics Performance Sheets keep you cool, even on the hottest summer nights. Chics are the world's most breathable, moisture-wicking, ridiculously soft sheets with superior stretch.
Go to trycheeks.com to save over $100 today.
Stay tuned to get this 5-piece ultra.
Well, for millions of Americans, the long, hot holiday weekend serves as an excellent excuse to head out to the nearest body of water. But accidents can happen if you aren't careful for both experienced and novice boaters. Jim Emmons is the executive director of the Water Sports Foundation and joins us live this morning to share some expert tips on how to stay safe while having fun. Jim, thanks so much for being with us. Now, I want to start with, before cruising away, what are some of the first things I need to do to prepare for my day on the water?
Well, thank you so much for having us on your show, Felicia. Boating is so important in America. And with the recent numbers that came out last year, more accidents to 2020 from the pandemic, it's important that we get out in front of these folks and remind them there are a few things they can do to be safe, and we can bring accidents and fatalities down back to levels that we had pre-pandemic. But to answer your question, the things to do are to do a dry land check, make sure your boat is secure, make sure your boat has all of its safety equipment, including U.S. Coast Guard approved life jackets for all the members of your crew. You're going to need all of your carriage equipment, which includes a throw raft, a throw cushion, signaling device, flares, all sorts of things you can find on U.S. Coast Guard auxiliary website. But the main thing is, once you get out to the water, it is to avoid the alcohol. Here it is on 4th of July Day weekend, and people want to go out and they want to have fun, but we try to tell people that they should designate a sober skipper, just like a designated driver on a car, that someone's going to avoid the alcohol and get everyone back home safely.
So let's talk about the importance of filing a float plan. What info should you share with those who are joining your boat as well?
Well, float plans are critical, and it's simply just telling someone in your friends or family circle when you plan to leave, where you plan to go, how long you're going to be gone, and when you plan to be back. And, anyone that's received that float plan can monitor and notice, if you're not back by the time you're supposed to be, then it might be time to get the authorities to start looking. And I can tell you on dozens of occasions where a float plan has saved someone. So it's a critically important step. People tend to overlook it, but we are doing our best to make boaters more aware of this step and make them pick up and use a float plan as they go forward.
Yeah, and I think an important thing that sometimes people don't realize, depending on where you are, you might not have cell service out on the water, so it's good to let people know in advance. So if you do happen to be meeting up with other boating friends, I've seen this many times, lots of boats in a small area, how do you navigate a crowded situation like that?
Well, that's a good question. Coming up on a flotilla and trying to raft up with friends it's a lot of fun. If you've ever done it, it's just a really good time to sort of drift together or anchor off together and enjoy the water, enjoy the sunshine. But the things we tell people is, as you come to the raft, to come in slowly. Make sure all of your passengers have their arms and their feet inside the boat. Everyone should be seated in a manufacturer's designated seat. Again, everyone should be wearing their life jacket, their Coast Guard approved life jacket. And then bring your fenders out on the outside of your boat and gently, very slowly, gently slide into a spot where you can tie off. And then to do the same thing when you're departing is just to do those steps backward. But the one thing with that one is to make sure you never start the motor or the engine with people in the water. We want to make sure everybody's in the boat before you start the motor.
Yeah, that can turn what has been an awesome day into a bad day really quickly. Jim, great tips for everyone trying to get out there on the water and celebrate the holiday. That's Jim Emmons, the Executive Director of the Water Sports Foundation. Thanks so much for those tips, and happy 4th of July.
Those aren't fireworks. Those are loud booms of thunder sounding over Lyman, Colorado earlier today. Feisty storm moving through the eastern part of the state brought a burst of rain. More storms are possible today, for your 4th of July. That's the scariest part of all weather, severe weather and weather hazards is lightning. My goodness. Let's have a look at the sort of weather over the middle of the country. I think we got a shot at some big storms later on this afternoon. Not yet, though. It's actually fairly quiet. This water vapor loop goes back about 12 hours, a little bit more than that, showing you that over the middle of the country last night we did right here have some thunderstorms, but then they began to weaken, and now we're looking pretty good. We don't have any severe weather. In fact, we have hardly any showers across parts of the central U.S., and that is also the case for much of the remainder of the country, except for right along the Gulf Coast. Later on today, there's a shot at some severe weather. This is an area outlined by the Storm Prediction Center, which goes from Texas through parts of western Kansas all the way into the Great Lakes. How about that? A little bit of chance for severe weather in northern Minnesota, in the Arrowhead. I think the severe weather chances there may be greater than they are anywhere else in that zone, precisely because the frontal zone is up there and some stronger dynamics are in play. But elsewhere, in this forecast, this future model, you can see, maybe some pretty big storms here across parts of the panhandle of Texas and eastern New Mexico. But that's later on this evening and overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning before, once again, these die off and we probably repeat the process like we did today. Stay tuned for much more coverage on Tropical Storm Elsa.
What will you
Welcome back to a weekend recharge. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow live in Key West, Florida. We are now under tropical storm warnings because of Tropical Storm Elsa coming this way. I want to bring in Dr. Greg Postel, a storm specialist who's tracking this tropical storm as well. And let's just talk about the strength of this, Dr. Postel. I know that's not as good as the track forecast. Is there still any chance that this thing will become a hurricane before it approaches the Keys in southwest Florida as we head throughout the night on Monday to Tuesday?
There's a chance, Paul, but it doesn't seem a likely scenario. I mean, there's really a whole range still of possibilities, and that's how you have to look at this. While maybe the most likely option is that it remains a tropical storm strength, yes, there is some opportunity, given the fact that it will be over a marine environment, maybe longer than some of the earlier forecasters suggest. But, Paul, I think overall that we're really probably going to deal with a tropical storm. But those, as you mentioned all along, can be very significant with their impacts, Paul.
And let's talk about that because, again, the National Hurricane Center and the models have been far more accurate with the actual track. And that track, or that cone that we've been tracking for several days, it really has not taken this part of Florida, talking about the lower Keys, out of its path. And, again, that's the center point, but we're still going to have impacts even well away from the center, the middle, upper Keys, and even a coastal flood concern even in South Florida.
Yeah, let's just say, that's a good point, Paul. Let's just say the center of Elsa moves somewhere inside of this cone at those times you can see and at that intensity. We are still very likely to see significant impacts all along the coastline, the eastern coast of Florida, Georgia, South and North Carolina, of course. But there will be an onshore wind. There may be some minor coastal flooding. And tropical storm force winds are nothing to sneeze at. I mean, if you have let's just say, a wind that is allegedly sustained at 50 to 60 miles per hour, you can have gusts that are a lot higher than that in some of the stronger storms. That kind of wind can do damage. So there's a lot of things, Paul, that we have to sort of sort through. And if you look at the models, the individual ones that go into making the Hurricane Center's forecast, they're now kind of leaning even a little bit west of maybe some of those earlier projections, Paul.
Well, let's talk about, the weather's going downhill throughout the day on Monday, but when will the weather start to improve here? A lot of people here on vacation. This area thrives with tourist dollars here, so a lot of people want to get back in the water. We saw jet skiers, paddle boarders earlier this morning. So when will weather start to improve so people can get back to their Key life and even their vacation here in the Keys?
Well, it looks like probably by Tuesday, as you can see in this forecast. Let's say this is the Hurricane Center's outline of the cone, that the center is somewhere along the leading edge of that. Well, Paul, it does seem like by Tuesday in the Keys, things get much better. But then, unfortunately, for those of us farther north, not so much, right? Then we track things on up from there. Thank you very much, Paul. And I'll finish with this forecast showing you that even on Wednesday, the center of Elsa, maybe somewhere going along like this. Unless something changes. Stay tuned for that. But let's just say the center's moving through there. We're going to have some pretty, strong thunderstorms and some gusty winds and potentially some minor coastal flooding all the way up through parts of eastern North Carolina, Felicia, through about Wednesday evening. And then even beyond that, we're going to be dealing with it probably through Thursday anyway. And then a stronger system aloft comes in and probably whisks it away over the North Atlantic. So, Felicia, long way to go with this one.
Yeah, certainly something to watch. Something to watch here as well, Dr. Postel. Hey, look at this. I promise the fireworks are not happening that fast. Although that's about my attention span for fireworks. I would take it. This is a time lapse of a fireworks display in Port Washington, Wisconsin. If you have plans on seeing fireworks tonight in Port Washington, the weather's going to be absolutely perfect with mostly clear skies, temperatures in the 70s. Looks so peaceful and beautiful. I love it. Let's talk about where you may be loving your weather or where you may not love it quite as much. The good news is if you had a beautiful day yesterday, for the most part, you're getting another beautiful day today, like Atlanta, D.C., Kansas City, a little toasty, definitely a bit above average as you look at the northern tier. Now, along this I-10 corridor, we are going to have that chance for some scattered storms again. So Houston, especially later through your afternoon. And we do have some of those light monsoonal rains moving through the Four Corners region. Let's get a little patriotic with it, shall we? It is the 4th of July. Let's head to Justice, West Virginia, where you'll be in the lower 80s through your evening. By 9 o'clock, we're down in the mid-70s after sunset. Patriot, Ohio, 7 to 8. You're going from the mid-80s to the upper 70s. Nice and comfortable for you if you were waiting for that sunset to get out there and watch those fireworks. To America, Illinois, where it's going to be nice and sunny through your evening, but upper 70s by 9 o'clock. Picture perfect. Well, stay with the Weather Channel for continuing coverage as we track Elsa, live reports and expert analysis you will not get anywhere else from now until midnight tonight.
Sweaty and
Impacts across the Caribbean already from tropical storm, at one point Hurricane Elsa, as it approaches the U.S. as we head throughout Monday and Tuesday. Welcome back to Weekend Recharge. Happy July 4th. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow live in Key West, Florida. Back in the studio, we have meteorologist Felicia Combs and our storm specialist, Dr. Greg Postel, standing by. We'll hear from them momentarily. Let's get the very latest on what's going on with Elsa, still a tropical storm, 60-mile-per-hour sustained winds, but moving west-northwest at around 13 miles per hour. But we have changes in our watches and warnings. Now here in the Florida Keys, the Middle Keys, Lower Keys, including here in Key West, now a tropical storm warning in effect for us. But also, look at the yellow now, the Upper Keys, talking about even Key Largo, as well as southwestern Florida, say Naples, Marco Island, and points along parts of Florida Bay. We're now under a tropical storm watch. So now we have mainland Florida tropical storm watches issued for Elsa as well. We do expect tropical storm conditions to go to approach the area throughout the day and night on Monday into Tuesday. The path of this continues to bring parts of southwestern Florida and potentially even here in the Keys into that cone there of where the center will go. But these storms and hurricanes are not just points, they are systems bringing weather, and we'll have weather going downhill throughout the day on Monday and then slowly improving throughout the day on Tuesday here in the Keys, and a longer kind of time frame across southwestern Florida. And heads up in the Tampa, St. Pete area, you could see some watches issued before this day is done, looking at the path of this. Well, much more on Elsa, the impacts and preparations for its impacts coming up. And right now, it is the 4th of July. Felicia, good morning to you. Good afternoon now for you in the East Coast. And we still have a lot of plans to enjoy our nation's birthday outdoors from coast to coast. What's the forecast today?
Yeah, we do. A lot of us are going to have beautiful weather. Once again, it's turned out really nice. Some of us, though, are going to be dodging that chance for showers and storms. Here's the what's the cheat code to the forecast today. If you had showers and storms yesterday, you'll probably be dodging them again today. If you had beautiful weather, you'll probably have beautiful weather again today. So it's kind of the tale of the haves and the have-nots. That frontal boundary stalled, really not moving anywhere. So that is keeping many of the same areas that had the storms yesterday with that chance for showers and storms again today. Although we are throwing in this risk for some severe storms from northern Minnesota up around the Great Lakes region down through the plains as we move through the afternoon and evening. We're also getting some of those monsoonal rains across the southern portions of the Four Corners region. Here's what we're looking at in terms of temperatures. It is still hot, still well above average as we look toward the northern tier. Record highs possible today for places like Bismarck. As we look back toward the Pacific Northwest, still a bit above average, and then pretty comfortable for most of the country here across the Mississippi Valley into portions of the Ohio Valley. A place like Chicago, though, a bit above average in the lower 90s. So that's what it looks like here. An intense scene, though, spotted in the Dominican Republic as Elsa sent massive waves crashing along this coastal highway. This video was captured Saturday in Santo Domingo as the storm unleashed gusty winds across the region. And Dr. Postel, of course, we just got in that most recent 11 a.m. intermediate update. And this is really a watch and see. But one thing that we know is happening for sure right now, Elsa is lashing Jamaica and Cuba. And regardless of it, you know, I'm going to quote, just being a tropical storm, when you've got that much rain and that prolonged period of wind, it's going to cause some issues.
It will. Yeah. Heavy rain and some coastal flooding and gusty winds. Even tropical storm force winds can do damage. We know that. So something to watch. Good points, Felicia. Thank you. Let's have a look at what we've got sort of in a bigger picture. This is where it is right now, Elsa, and the weather right now over much of the Bahamas and central and southern Florida and even western Cuba is actually pretty nice. I mean, that tells us that geographically anyway, we're a long way away from seeing any of those significant impacts from Elsa in the United States. But, you know, temporally, in other words, how long will it be before we get those weather impacts? Probably about a day, maybe less than that. We'll be watching it very carefully. So let's have a look inside, or as close we can, into Elsa and what it's doing. We know the pressure is relatively high. In fact, you probably might not notice it if you happen to have a home barometer over the middle of the ocean in the Caribbean. You wouldn't really tell. Couldn't tell that Elsa was moving through, given the day-to-day pressure variations. It really doesn't show up in the pressure field, but it's got this circulation around it associated with other factors that is actually relatively strong. We're seeing winds over 25 miles per hour, according to the models. That kind of wind, sustained wind, extends hundreds of miles away, especially on the east side of the circulation. So as Paul and Felicia were talking about, don't necessarily focus on the center. You can, because there's important information around it. But also, well away from it, we're seeing some pretty breezy conditions and some stormy times. Earlier today, in fact, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba gusted over 55 miles per hour. The satellite presentation is actually degrading. In the last few hours, we've lost some of those bright reds. The cloud tops are warming. They're not as high, as tall as they used to be. There's some evaporation ongoing in the interior of the thunderstorm groups. So looking just at the infrared satellite shots here, you think, yeah, I can understand why this is weaker than it was yesterday. And in fact, when you look at the visible satellite shots, these here are cirrus clouds without much thunderstorm activity, and I do believe the center at low levels is somewhere there, relatively devoid of convection. The storms are on the edge, and that matters, Felicia, when we go forward in time. So don't concentrate necessarily near where the center is. This thing has storms out at great peripheral distance.
Yeah, so let's talk about what exactly we know on Elsa. Let's get you caught up to speed right now. Tropical storm warnings are now up for parts of the Florida Keys. Florida State's Emergency Operations Center is activated and ramping up operations for the response to Elsa. Florida's governor issued a state of emergency for 15 counties ahead of the storm this weekend, and demolition preps are underway in Surfside at the site of that collapsed condo in advance of Elsa's approach to South Florida. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, at least 3 people have died as a result of the storm. So very sad things there. Of course, when you're talking about this much rain, landslides, mudslides all coming into account. But Dr. Postel, another thing that we've got to think about is that onshore wind, the prolonged period that we're going to have because it's moving slowly. And also, you and I were talking about this off air. You know, the models have not done a great job with intensity forecasting. It happened last season. We're seeing it now. It's underperforming currently. So what would you tell people to watch as we're looking towards, say, early next week when it emerges north of Cuba?
Keep in mind what the Hurricane Center is saying. Obviously, they're taking the best value, the most likely scenario, which keeps it at tropical storm strength. But also, as you said, keep in the back of your mind that, yeah, there is some possibility it gets stronger than forecast. That's always the case. Intensity forecasting is extremely difficult, the hardest part of all of this game that we're playing right now. So really, this is a very significant system to contend with, and will bring with it the impacts that a tropical storm does. But as I said, there is some chance that it finds a home, a harbor, safe harbor, sort of figuratively, to strengthen, and perhaps the atmosphere opens up that possibility. But it's not happening now. It has been weakening this morning. Hurricane hunters were in there, and we're finding a relatively weak system overall, with still thunderstorms, big waves, heavy rain and all, but definitely not of the hurricane variety. But look what we've got here across parts of the northern Gulf of Mexico and Florida. That is a frontal zone associated with sort of an upper trough that moved in last night and yesterday into the region. And with its strong wind aloft, shaped like that, that's kind of protecting the central and western part of the Gulf of Mexico. It's not impossible that it's going to head that way, but it sure is unlikely given this upper level steering pattern, which is why the cone is kind of shaped like that. The real trap door for Elsa is north and then northeastward, very close to and over Cuba, and then near the Florida Keys, and very close to the center, moving west coast of Florida or slightly offshore. And then northeastward from there at the intensities here listed by the Hurricane Center. But Felicia's point was well taken, that, you know what, if this thing is over water and maybe the atmospheric conditions allow it a little bit and it organizes itself internally a little bit better, there is some possibility it's stronger. Can't discount that, even though this is the most likely scenario. So again, speaking of intensity, the models are saying the same thing as they have pretty much all along, that Elsa is very likely, in going forward in time, going through Tuesday, Wednesday, when it's out over the Gulf of Mexico, very likely to be at tropical storm strength underneath that hurricane threshold of 74 miles per hour. So that is some good news. But the not so good news is that Felicia will bring impactful weather and potentially some flooding rain Maybe. And we'll see about the onshore wind that will occur on perhaps parts of southeastern Florida during the day on Monday and into Tuesday. Showers and thunderstorms and maybe some isolated severe weather. And also, again, those minor coastal issues with flood, perhaps some minor coastal flooding with the water rises right along the coast. Felicia.
And you know, Dr. Postel, some of these places that are going to get rain from Elsa have already seen quite a bit of rain. Summer downpours triggering street flooding in major Gulf Coast cities like Houston and Tampa. Of course, Houston, you don't really have to worry about the flooding or the rains from Elsa, but Tampa, you're going to have to watch it. We've got a stalled front. It's going to help trigger more thunderstorms for Houston today, but Elsa is going to bring that heavy rain to Tampa as we move through the week. Yeah, man, that is absolutely what you don't want to get caught in, because you never know where it's going to get deeper, just how deep it is. Is the water or is the road washed out underneath that water? So a lot of different things that make driving through that standing water like that no fun. So we've got some thunderstorms dashing through central Florida at this point, some rain across the 95 corridor and also across 75 Cedar Key, a few showers for you. First Coast, Space Coast, you guys have those showers moving through. Now, here's the good news if we're looking for it. The bulk of the activity is in the Gulf of Mexico. So if you're on dry land, you're really not dealing with quite as much in, say, Tallahassee or Pensacola. Do have some storms here moving along the Gulf Shores area. Apalachicola, some storms going to move through for you. And as we head farther west, that same stalled front is helping to stir up the atmosphere across Texas as well. Across that 35 corridor, Waco down through Austin, you're getting some showers. San Antonio, you've had a steady stream of showers as well. Houston, you got a break right now, but all that's going to continue to build in southeasterly, and you'll have that chance for a few storms as we move through your afternoon. There's why. There's our culprit. There's our frontal boundary that's hanging around. It provides a focal point for that moisture, as you could see very well when we were looking at that radar loop. And this is what's happening. We've got the Gulf moisture still hanging around, and Elsa is going to act as a transport mechanism of even more tropical moisture, moving that northward as we head through the early part of the week. So increasing rain and storm chances. It is the time of year where you do have those afternoon summertime thunderstorms, but these thunderstorms are going to be possible throughout the day, and they're going to be a little feisty and have a bunch of moisture to work with, so you could have some flooding issues. Few scattered storms around today. Tomorrow, many of the same areas and a bit more widespread. Paul, kind of the same story as we talk about Key West. Beautiful right now, but this is the time you need to be preparing before Elsa gets there and the weather deteriorates.
And it's tough, Felicia, because it's even kind of hotter than a typical day here. Typically before the storm gets here, we have descending air, so you got blue sky like you have now, not much of a breeze, but it's going to be hot here, even up the Keys, even to Miami. They could see heat indices 105, 110 in Miami, and here we have a little bit of a breeze right now. It's a little refreshing, but it's still hot. And, you know, this is a tourist area here across the Lower Keys, and even though we're under a tropical storm warning right now, they still have a lot of activities planned. We have fireworks going off here later on this evening, as do many communities, not only across the Keys, but across the country here. And we talked to some people earlier about how what they're planning to do, even though we have Elsa looming there in the Caribbean.
It's 4th of July weekend. What kind of activities have you been doing heat-related that you've been enjoying in Key West?
We have our rental has a pool, so we've been staying in the pool majority of the time, going to the strips, coming back, going back in the pool, just staying wet at all times.
You know, I was in New York earlier in the week, and that's what you got to do. You got to stay by water, whether it's a pool or the ocean. And I mean, look at the ocean. You could literally water ski on this. It is that calm right now. I'm sure this will look different in about, say, 36 hours as Elsa approaches, and that's also why we're under a tropical storm warning. We expect tropical storm conditions within 36 hours. So today, gorgeous. Enjoy it. That is if you have your preparations for tomorrow. Expect the worst, hope for the best. And right now, the forecast is still just some tropical storm conditions, but also notice how the watches now are extended into southwestern mainland Florida here. Talking about Marco Island, Naples as well. And just a matter of time, they could be upgraded to warnings. And also the watches will push northward, probably into Fort Myers, eventually St. Pete, Tampa as well. They will probably see some watches and warnings issued as we head throughout tonight, tomorrow into Tuesday, as we have landfall in mainland Florida as well as we head into this week. And then we could have impacts across the southeast, mid-Atlantic. Can't rule out the northeast as well. Your heat wave is broken for the time being, but impacts begin here throughout the day on Monday. Truthfully, it's more afternoon and evening, and definitely as the sun gets lower, we'll be in the thick of things as that center starts to approach. But again, these Systems, Felicia, aren't just center points, so don't get caught up in the center, get caught up in the scope of the impacts. It will have impacts on both sides of the Florida coast as we head into the duration of this event. Our first potential landfall here in the Florida Keys of a tropical storm since 2010 in the month of July. Felicia?
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. We've seen it many times that the impacts can be serious, even well outside of the cone, well away from the center. So stay vigilant. Well, coming up on this red, white, and blue edition of Weekend Recharge, get into the out there for the 4th and visit a national park. If you're longing for solitude, our guest will guide you to destinations where wildlife vastly outnumber people. Now let's take a look at some of the 4th of July forecasts out there. Across the country, it's going to be hot in the northern tier and showers along the Gulf Coast. A few storms as well. A bit of monsoonal rain building into the southern portions of the Four Corners region. San Fran, beautiful, lower 70s for you guys with sunshine. In Atlanta, you could not ask for a better day. Mid-80s and sunshine sticking around.
There's an America we build.
is dedicated to Earth and all its wonders. And filmmakers, it's your last chance to submit your work to the Pattern Earth Film Challenge. Submit your short film that focuses on our changing climate, eco-innovation, or sustainability for a chance to win $10,000. Plus, have your work featured on the Weather Channel and join our mission to inspire others to help shape Earth's future. Go to pattrn.com for details.
The hurricane hunters are keeping busy this weekend, keeping tabs on Tropical Storm Elsa. This flight yesterday evening, you could see the sun setting in the background. And they reported that Elsa was weakening slightly, down from its earlier intensity, and also moving more slowly. In fact, a lot more slowly than it was just 24 hours ago. So it's slower, but it's also a lot weaker than it was, I think, a day ago. And you can kind of see that in the satellite pictures, and I'll get into that. The hurricane hunters, in fact, even this morning, were inside of Tropical Storm Elsa, slicing and dicing their way, trying to find what was going on in the interior. And what they found was the pressures at the surface were actually quite high. In fact, not much different than you'd see on any given day during early July without a storm moving through. The winds were substantial in the surrounding areas, surrounding the area of lowest pressure, which is, again, not that low, about 1,010 millibars or so. But the winds were in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range. And overall, on the satellite presentation, you can see what they did find was really not a whole lot there. And that is Elsa right here, just for context. Just south, the center is just south of Cuba and north of Jamaica. So actually, the center of circulation is over water. You might think that might give it an opportunity to strengthen, but it has yet to find itself in that way. And I think it's kind of on this path of a sort of maintaining its intensity for a while longer before it probably moves over Cuba later on tonight or early tomorrow morning. This is some of the wind pattern around it. And earlier, I might add, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, when it was, 100 miles away from where the center was, Reported wind gusts over 55 miles per hour. So keep that in mind when we talk about where the center of Elsa is going to go. There are some pretty strong winds and some pretty fierce thunderstorms well away, hundreds of miles away from where the center is. And still, even beyond that, we've got, strong winds just circulating around Elsa that are above 25 miles per hour, according to the models anyway. So this is a pretty broad wind field that will bring impactful weather many hundreds of miles away from where the center goes. But let's talk about that satellite presentation. There it is. It looks kind of disheveled. It looks like it's really having a hard time trying to get itself organized. And there is some suggestion why that might be the case. There's actually some really dry air aloft sitting here. Looking at some of the forecast soundings this afternoon, relative humidities are less than 30% at about 10 to 12,000 feet up. And with some slight northwesterly shear, some of that dry air may be getting into the interior in here, which is why maybe one of the reasons we're not able to sustain a lot of convection in the inside there in the core of Elsa, which is what you would need in order to get some strengthening. So there's some hostile conditions apparently in the environment immediately surrounding Elsa. Felicia.
Of course, Elsa, one area of concern, thank you, Dr. Postel, but also that lightning could start even more fires in Western Canada. Tuesday, get this, temperatures reached a record-shattering 121 degrees in the town of Lytton. The next day, a fire erupted and destroyed most of the town, killing 2 people. Right now, there are more than 170 fires burning in British Columbia. Let's talk about the heat out west, because you guys have been suffering from drought, from a historic heat for the Pacific Northwest. It's been a dangerous situation for a part of the country that's not as heavily AC'd, especially across the Pacific Northwest, as say, the Southeast. So active wildfires currently, these are the wildfires that are greater than 100 acres. We're sitting at 49, just over 640,000 acres. And as we edge deeper into the summer, that is when we even start to see the possibility for those fires peaking even more. Now, no rain expected for where we could really need it in the next 7 days across portions of Nevada and most of California. But you'll notice here today, maybe some monsoonal rains getting into the Four Corners region, but the heat is really part of the problem as well, because that exacerbates the fact that it's very dry out there and helps evaporate that water even more. Excessive heat warnings and heat advisories in places. We've got widespread temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above average. This has been a prolonged period of well above average temperatures for a portion of the country where there's just not a lot of AC in a lot of these homes. 90s to 100 degrees for millions as we head through early next week, so the summer heat is sticking around. Our coverage of Tropical Storm Elsa continues. Meteorologist Paul Goodlow is live in Key West as preparations get underway. Hey, Paul.
Yes, we're preparing, Felicia, and just listening to Dr. Postel, we're hoping that there's not much left to Elsa as it approaches, but we can't bet the farm on that yet. Tropical storm warnings have now been issued because we do expect tropical storm conditions here within 36 hours. But today's July 4th. People are enjoying their vacation. Barely a ripple here on the Atlantic waters on the Florida Strait. It's going to be a great 4th, but the 5th I'm concerned about.
Search and rescue efforts have been put on hold in Surfside, Florida, as Tropical Storm Elsa threatens the Sunshine State. Demolition crews are preparing to bring down the remainder of the partially collapsed condo that officials say is at a heightened risk of collapsing due to the storm. 121 people still remain unaccounted for. The death toll right now stands at 24. Our Justin Michaels will be reporting live from Surfside today, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Half past the hour as weekend recharge rolls on. I'm meteorologist Felicia Combs. Tropical Storm Elsa lashing parts of Cuba and Jamaica with rain and wind as it heads toward Florida. Our Paul Goodlow is live in Key West. We'll get to him in just a minute. But first, let's get the latest on Elsa. Of course, we just got that intermediate advisory in the 11 a.m. advisory. And then, of course, that next advisory coming out at 2 p.m. So winds at 60 miles per hour as of this latest latest update. Moving still pretty slowly. That is actually bad news. You don't want a slow-moving tropical system because that's prolonging the period of time that you are stuck in that wind and in that rain. So you can see that we've got tropical storm warnings now in effect for the lower Keys and a tropical storm watch as you look toward the upper Keys in southwest Florida. That is why you need to start preparing now. I know the weather in Key West is beautiful, but you don't want to be preparing as we head into early next week and you're dealing with some of the impacts from Elsa getting closer. Here's a quick look at the cone. You can see we're dealing with this through the middle part of the week and into the latter part of the week as we look toward the northeastern seaboard. So Dr. Postel, this is a system that's going to impact a lot of people. You know, tropical storms don't get quite as much of attention as, say, Category 3, Category 4, but still they're going to bring dangerous conditions.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. Tropical storm force winds can do damage. There's no doubt about that. And also, tropical storms bring with them potentially a lot of rain, some flooding, and some coastal flooding from water rises. So they, although may not be as strong as hurricanes, tropical storms aren't, but they still bring with them impactful and pretty bad weather. There is Elsa right now, right here. And the weather over parts of Florida, western Cuba, and the Bahamas today looking pretty good. 4th of July looks good. Now, there's a lot of rain showers and thunderstorms here over the Gulf and over the northern half of Florida. That's with a frontal zone. But that frontal zone is kind of important because it's going to be helping direct traffic and helping give Elsa a pathway out of the Caribbean and northward. What do I mean by that? Well, the winds aloft are kind of like that, likely keeping the western Gulf of Mexico, including Texas and Louisiana, off the hook. So I don't think we're going to be dealing with Elsa moving that far west. But there is an opportunity and, of course, a very strong likelihood that Elsa will be drawn northward, just like the cone has always been, roughly targeting this part of the eastern Gulf of Mexico and Florida and elsewhere northward from there. So do expect Tropical Storm Elsa, to center of it anyway, to move in this way. And we've been talking all along, as we do every season with every system, that the impacts often extend well outside the cone. Elsa is no different than that. We will likely see very significant impacts even in areas in southeast Florida as Elsa approaches, with thunderstorms even now hundreds of miles away from where the center is, and some gusty winds as well. Notice that the official intensity keeps it at tropical storm strength over the eastern Gulf, but it is possible, not likely, but possible it gets stronger than predicted. We know intensity forecasting, very challenging, of course. And if you look at the models going forward in time, there's a timestamp on the bottom. Each one of these models represents a different forecast, and there's a consensus saying that this will remain a tropical storm force strength, but that still doesn't eliminate completely the possibility that it does get in a little stronger, so stay tuned. Now, Key West is one of those places that will probably first be impacted by Elsa in the United States, and that's exactly where we find the Weather Channel's Paul Goodloe. Paul.
Yeah, that is great news that we're not expecting a very strong or even a hurricane right now is the forecast for the NHC. That's great news for the scores of people who are on the Keys here vacationing, whether it's a private home, an Airbnb, a bed and breakfast, perhaps even a resort as well. You can hear some of the music in the background. They've got pool parties, stuff planned all day long here because we're going to have a great day on the 4th, despite the fact we're under a tropical storm warning. We're hoping for better weather as we head throughout Monday, but we do expect as Elsa, what's left of Elsa or the center of Elsa, to get closer here, we'll see our blue skies start to turn a lot cloudier, a little more breezy as well, and more rain coming on through. But we are concerned about some of the other impacts. If we do have embedded in some of these lines of showers, maybe even some tornadoes. Can't rule out tornadoes and severe weather when we have a landfalling tropical system, even a weakening tropical storm, because they're going from the relatively frictionless water onto land, and it starts to set up shear zones, and quick spin-ups are quite possible. So we're not quite out of the woods. It's looking better in terms of the latest model projections, but we're expecting conditions to go downhill throughout Monday.
Okay.
Blazing heat will be the big story this 4th of July holiday weekend. Despite temperatures at or near 100 degrees, Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona will be a popular destination as Americans get into the out there to relax and celebrate America's 245th birthday. This beautiful park was the 6th most visited national park last year, welcoming, get this, 2.9 million visitors. Well, many of our national parks are seeing a huge surge in visitors this summer as virus-weary Americans head back out on vacation again. But you can declare your independence from crowds this holiday weekend by visiting some hidden jewels. We're joined live now by Will Pattis, co-founder of More Than Just Parks. Will, thanks for being with us this morning. I want to start with, there are parks people can visit this weekend while avoiding some of those huge crowds we're seeing. Please tell us where those are, and we'll keep it a secret, I promise.
Yeah, happy 4th of July to you. So we're talking about parks like Capitol Reef National Park in Utah, which is a breathtaking national park, has all the same scenery as like Zion, but none of the crowds. North Cascades National Park in Washington, you have Mount Rainier, you have Olympic, which are both very crowded, but North Cascades, there's hardly anybody there. You're talking about Redwood National Park in California and also Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota, where you can see just amazing waterways with none of the visitors.
That sounds like a plan. Now, the national parks aren't the only places to go to get the outside weather of summer. Tell us about some of the best kept secrets that might be even less crowded.
Yeah, so my favorite places to go lately because of the crowds are the national forests, which you can find national forests right next to really popular national parks without any of the visitors. You're talking like 1/10, 1/20th of the visitors. Look at Black Hills National Forest right next to Mount Rushmore in the Badlands. Look at the Flathead National Forest in Montana, which is right next to Glacier National Park. The Dixie National Forest, which touches on all of those Utah national parks, has spectacular scenery and nobody is there. And also I think I mentioned the Flathead National Forest as well. So some really great spots.
Yeah, those sound awesome. Now, here's another thing, though. With the record temperatures being set across the West, wildfire season just beginning, what are some tips for people to make sure they're doing their part to prevent the fires?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially on a day like today. So go to these places, enjoy them, but do not bring fireworks. Do not start fires today in these parks. Really look at those fire guidelines because we are experiencing extremely dry conditions on public lands, especially. Public lands are a little bit understaffed right now, and so if you are there, enjoy fireworks shows where they are, but do not start any sort of fires because it is very dangerous right now.
Yeah, it can spread very quickly. Kind of quickly, Will, with such high visitation in the parks, one of the worries right now is damage to these special places. What can visitors do to make sure they're keeping these national treasures pristine?
Yeah, this is another great question. I would recommend to folks to pack out your trash. Don't put it in the park trash cans or forest trash cans because that's pretty difficult for them to kind of pack out. Also, stay on maintained trails, follow leave no trace guidelines. Don't start your own trails in most of these places unless there's clear guidelines because it can really damage fragile ecosystems. And, you know,
we had 1 3/4 inches of rain, Midland, Odessa region with a lot of cloud to ground lightning. Look at that. Those lightning strikes are dangerous and can actually start fires on the very dry conditions sometimes observed in the high plains this time of year. Today, we got another shot at some thunderstorms, I think, over some of the same areas in the high plains of Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. But right now, we're looking pretty good. There is nothing out there anywhere near that. This animation goes back about 12 hours, and you can see some thunderstorms formed over the high plains of the Colorado region and Texas and New Mexico, moved eastward and then dissipated. I think we're going to go through that same routine today. We'll see some thunderstorms develop this evening and then move eastward and then dissipate late tonight or early tomorrow morning. This is a radar shot right now showing you not a whole lot going on. In fact, no severe weather, hardly any thunderstorm activity at all. But I think later on today we have a shot at it with the Storm Prediction Center outlining this area across parts of West Texas on northward into northern Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin for the opportunity for thunderstorms with damaging straight line winds, hail being the primary hazards. I think that's going to be the primary threat today. So with the forecast, you can see hour by hour, we're not going to see much for a while. But then again, late this afternoon and evening, there go those thunderstorms blowing up over the Rockies and then moving eastward from there and bringing with them the chance for some severe weather, especially across parts, well, two areas, one North Texas and another one in northern Minnesota. So something to watch as we go forward during the afternoon and evening hours. Here's a zoom in picture, though, by the way, in areas in and around Amarillo southward to Lubbock. We've got some thunderstorms overnight tonight and then probably weakening once again tomorrow morning in a repeat of what we saw yesterday and this morning. Felicia.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. Well, next on Weekend Recharge, we are still keeping an eye on what you can expect from Elsa as it races across the Caribbean and puts a lock on Florida. Will the tropical storm drown out the Sunshine State fireworks tonight? Well, we'll time it out for you.
Ever notice how
It's the 4th of July. Welcome to Weekend Recharge. I'm meteorologist Paul Gertho live in Key West, Florida, where the sun is shining, a light breeze here. The waters of the Atlantic or the Florida Strait pretty calm right now, calm enough to probably water ski on them right now. We saw someone paddle boarding earlier this morning, some kayakers and some bathers out there. And yeah, the water is barely moving. It is warm, it is comfortable, and on land it's hot and lots of sunshine and blue sky, but we are still under a tropical storm warning here. That was upgraded at 11 o'clock this morning from a watch to a warning. And now tropical storm watches now extend into southwestern mainland Florida. Talking about Naples onto Marco Island on towards the Florida Bay side of the Keys, and where the middle and lower Keys under that warning, tropical storm warning, upper Keys, Key Largo under a tropical storm watch. Miami, you're not in this at all, but you probably see some impacts because we're tracking Elsa, a somewhat disorganized tropical storm right now. But because of that, let's bring in Dr. Greg Postel to talk about this and talk about, you know, everything textbook-wise should have Elsa getting better organized and strengthening from the warm waters of the Caribbean, from not being over land, from it slowing down, but we're seeing the opposite. In fact, the wind speeds have gone down this morning.
They have, and it has undergone some weakening in the last even 12 hours. So while we didn't see it strengthen yesterday, we're actually seeing it weaken in front of our eyes. And yeah, there are some things about it, you're right about that, Paul, that you look at and you say, okay, well, gosh, man, the winds aloft at a given level aren't particularly strong. The outflow at the Cirrus altitude at 30,000 feet looks pretty good, but there's some other things in there, Paul, upon second review that suggests, you know what, we've got here, I can bring it up. There's a lot of dry air aloft that is sitting on its western edge here. And there's just a little bit of northwesterly or westerly shear impacting the system. That is allowing some of that dry air to get into the interior, which is, I think, one of the reasons why we're not seeing much other than just cirrus clouds where the lowest pressure is. The thunderstorms appear to be located on these semicircles on the eastern side or down shear side of the system. So Paul, I mean, you're right. Just on a first glance, it's like, why isn't it doing anything? It's over water. The atmosphere is actually not all that conducive to it, and I think that's putting the brake on it for now. Paul.
That's some great news for people here across South Florida and the Keys as well. And let's talk about what we can kind of bank on and what's still kind of not quite sure. Because when it comes to these cones that we always see the timeline as well as the forecasted intensity. There's definitely not a one-to-one correlation in terms of the accuracy of where that center is going versus what that center will be in terms of strength as it gets there, in terms of intensity forecast accuracy versus track forecast intensity or accuracy.
Yes, you're exactly right. I think the tracks are pretty well understood to be much more accurate than the intensity forecast, which is much harder to gauge because there's so many things that go on inside of these things. We don't have the observational network and some of the other things we need to really understand how these tropical systems strengthen. But Paul, your point is very well taken, and we have to watch out for Elsa as early in the week it moves probably over water, the center of it or the core of it, and not that far from Florida. We've seen this cone many times. Now, I put inside of the cone, each one of these lines is a different forecast from a different model. So they're kind of leaning on the left side of this cone. Maybe that perhaps will lead to a westward slight adjustment to the cone. In future updates, we'll see about that. But regardless, it's been relatively consistent. I would say very consistent with the track going forward. But the intensity, again, although the expected value is 60 miles per hour, two things. One, as Paul was noting, and Felicia all morning long, that we're going to likely see bad weather even along the east coast of Florida and areas around there because this storm is big, the circulation is broad, and the bad weather extends way outside of the center region and likely way outside of the cone. But the intensity, you know, we have to watch it because it is possible, Felicia, that as Elsa moves northward and brings all its weather with it, that we indeed could see a stronger storm than forecast. But regardless, we know that tropical storms can be bad even if they're not hurricanes.
Yeah, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, as we always say. Thank you so much, Dr. Postel. Of course, it is 4th of July, so let's talk about your forecast. It is beautiful in San Fran, lower 70s there, but we've got the chance for a few storms along the Gulf Coast again. Place like Atlanta, Kansas City, upper 80s for you, plenty of sunshine, while it's pretty hot as you look at the northern tier. Let's head to Bald Eagle, Pennsylvania. You're going to be in the upper 70s today. It should be perfectly comfortable for watching those fireworks, and east to mid 70s for fireworks time. Stick around and watch more coming up.
We're back. Well, as you saw, those are some of the scenes of Elsa's deadly, destructive rampage as it moves across the Caribbean. And you know what? Florida, you guys are in Elsa's cone, increasing risks of tropical storm conditions. We're talking storm surge, heavy rain, and all of this could begin by late tomorrow night. Justin, over to you.
Well, Jordan, and though we're not in the cone here in Surfside, Florida, the race is on against the clock and Elsa here as the partially collapsed Champlain Towers needs to be brought down so rescue crews continue the back-breaking work of finding the missing. 121 still. I'm Justin Michaels with the latest here live in Surfside.
All right, Justin, we'll get caught up with you here in just a moment. Here is what we know, ladies and gentlemen. We are watching Elsa very, very closely as it inches its way closer to our U.S. soil. Florida has been activated as one of the state's emergency operations centers there and is basically the Sunshine State's ramping up for its response to what Elsa could be doing. Now, they're urging residents, you got to have your disaster supply kit stocked and ready with at least a week's worth of supplies. Florida Power and Light, they're also activating its emergency response plan for Elsa. The company there says it has 6,000 personnel ready to respond. The U.S. Coast Guard says tropical storm force winds are expected within 48 hours at ports in South Florida. Meanwhile, in Cuba, officials there evacuated 70,000 people along the island's southern region amid fears of flooding there. And of course, just taking a live look outside around the Grand Cayman area, the islands here, no watches or warnings are in effect for Grand Cayman, but you guys need to expect some impacts from Tropical Storm Elsa. With increasing clouds, showers, we could be seeing the conditions deteriorate within the next, like we were saying, 24 to 48 hours. So let's get the latest. We got Carl Parker here giving us an idea of, you know, what we're really looking like, because we saw Elsa get upgraded to a hurricane. Now it's tropical storm, but we need to make sure to remind people just to not let our guard down.
Yeah, you know, and it's pretty typical for these storms to sort of wax and wane in terms of intensity. And even just last night, we saw a really big blow up of thunderstorms, and it looked like it was on its way for a while to getting stronger. But now it's kind of waning once again. It's not as well formed as it was last night. A 60-mile-per-hour train as it's approaching Cuba, and then that land interaction likely knocks it back a bit, and it's probably going to stay somewhere in that vicinity as it's coming up towards Florida, maybe a mid to high grade tropical storm. But keep in mind, 60 miles per hour is not very far from 70 miles per hour. And so you're talking about possibly getting towards hurricane territory if it's just a little bit stronger than what is forecast right now. This is what it looked like last night, just this massive blow up of thunderstorms that we saw as it was passing southwest of Haiti. We actually saw the center reform just a little farther east, right underneath that big blow up of storms. So you see it jog back a little bit, and then it continued up and towards Jamaica and Cuba. And you know what's going on in those areas is here's Jamaica right there, and the south side of Cuba. In both of those spots, there are mountains that are over 6,000 feet tall. So even though the center is over the ocean, there's still a lot of terrain that is disrupting that flow into the tropical cyclone. So the result is that we are not seeing a well-formed storm right now. It does have time out over the open water, but it is going to be very close to the land in Cuba. Then it's going to go over Cuba. Beyond that, all of that land interaction is likely going to hold it back a little bit. And then on top of that, we are going to see stronger winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So here's the storm coming across Cuba. As it comes off of Cuba into the Florida Straits, got some stronger winds aloft, also impacting the circulation, and that continues to be the case even as it comes up to Florida. So all of these things are going to work to limit the intensity of the storm, and that's why when you look at the model guidance, what it's telling us is that it looks like it's solidly going to be a tropical storm at this point. Now, those things can still change, and any deviation in those environmental factors, you know, the shear, for example, could make a big difference in terms of what we're dealing with coming up to Florida. But there's the forecast for Monday. Center of circulation right there, a very east side loaded system. So the wind and the weather coming across Cuba, landslides, floodsides, a distinct possibility. That getting into the Keys late tomorrow. And then as we go into Tuesday, there's the center right there. Again, weather coming into west Florida and western parts of Florida, Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa, St. Pete. And then that center comes up and into South Georgia as we go into Wednesday, and some heavy rain and some wind along with that. So it's not, Jordan, that it's going to be a picnic or anything like that. It's going to be tough, but we can at least hope that it's not going to turn into a particularly strong storm, and it looks like it's not going to.
You know, I think one of the big things, too, is just the flood concerns that's going to come out of this system. Here's a look at what Elsa produced, causing a huge flood trouble over in the Dominican Republic. Look at all the water just rushing down at the bottom of the screen there. You've got rain turning streets into streams. This is the southern part of the Dominican Republic. The storm is already proving to be deadly in the DR because officials there say there was a 15-year-old boy and a 75-year-old woman that actually died in separate incidences after walls collapsed in on them. So this could be a good reminder for us, let's say in the Keys or, you know, anywhere in Florida basically, and maybe even some of the surrounding states that this storm could impact, to maybe just go out, clean your gutters, making sure everything is ready for a lot of precipitation. Just looking at the alerts right now, this is what we have active. You got the tropical storm warning that is in effect for most of the Keys. And then, you know, that top part up towards Key Largo, you guys are in that tropical storm watch, and that does include the southwest portion of the peninsula down there on the tip as well. Now remember, these could change depending on how the upper level steering mechanism that Carl was talking about, you know, could maybe shift the trajectory of the storm, because, you know, what if you get the storm system that's going to be on that right side? You know, what if the storm system's on this far left side? So anyway, the conditions are going to be specific as the storm progresses northward. We're waiting for it to turn north, and then once that happens, we're going to steer this thing out of here. But as you can see, that cone is pretty wide, and it has a chance to impact a lot of Florida. So here's the flash flood concerns that we have. Tuesday through, tomorrow all the way through Tuesday morning. I mean, you got the entire state that's going to be impacted by this for potential flood concerns. Even if you're not close to the center of the storm itself, those outer bands could produce a lot of precipitation. We had just a general thunderstorm last week. I believe it was Tampa. You had a system that produced 1 to 2 inches of rain in a fast amount of time, and boom, we had flood concerns in some backyard neighborhoods. So once again, that cone of uncertainty is going to get wider the farther out we go with our projections here. But this generally gives you an idea. This next week is going to be troublesome for us just to get out and about because of the precipitation coming through, the wind, everything that comes with a system like this. And so this could linger all the way through at least midweek until we get, the upper level airflow to pull it out of here. So we do have some flood concerns for most of us as we go into, Tuesday into Wednesday. Could it linger into Thursday? Potentially. We'll have to see how fast this thing cranks out. So here's Key West forecast. You got temperatures staying pretty consistent, but you got the rain and the wind. You guys are going to be right there in the potential bullseye of this thing. So we'll be watching your conditions closely, and this is a look at the tropical storm force winds, the winds you could feel, as it moves north of Cuba here. So remember, Monday to Tuesday is looking like when it could be the windiest for you folks. Now, I do got to get you some new video today that is showing the immediate aftermath of the collapse of the Champlain Towers. This is the South Condo here in Seaside, Florida, just 10 days ago. Witnesses to the catastrophe clearly stunned by what they are seeing. As you can imagine, at this point, we have 121 residents of the building. They're still unaccounted for. And now, with Tropical Storm Elsa growing closer, officials say they're going to have what's left of the building demolished. The Weather Channel's Justin Michaels is joining us live now from Seaside with the latest on those plans. And Justin, we're glad you're there giving us updates. We'll send it over to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jordan, right now the pressure is on the crews here to get this building demolished, get it down. And the goal, of course, is to drop it straight down so it doesn't impact any parts of the building that collapsed 10 days ago. Of course, they don't want to disturb any of that. And they also don't want Tropical Storm Elsa to knock it over. And that's why the rush is on right now to get it down. You can see the building behind me. That is it right over there, the shorter of the two buildings. Behind this new structure they're building, this skeleton of a building is actually going to be the new operations center. After the building comes down, they're going to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until they find all 121 people who are still missing. Now, this is a textbook case when it comes to weather and how just because we are nowhere near the cone that we're not going to have impacts, because we certainly are going to have impacts. And the mayor of Miami-Dade County actually talked about that this morning in the media conference, how that is on their mind and of concern. Watch right now.
So as soon as the building does come down, when the site has been deemed secure and we are given the all clear, which should happen very shortly after the demolition, our search and rescue teams will immediately resume their operations on the pile and continue their search. We are, of course, continuing to closely monitor the progress of the possible impacts of Tropical Storm Elsa, as hazardous weather conditions could force us to temporarily pause work again for the safety of the first responders, and we pray for limited impacts.
Mayor Danielle Levine Cava there of Miami-Dade County. So again, the race is on. The clock is ticking. The storm is approaching, and we absolutely have the potential here, beginning as early as tomorrow morning, to start get some of those tropical downpours. By Monday afternoon, we're probably going to start seeing maybe some tropical gusts. Could we see tropical storm force gusts? It certainly is likely. And then those kind of sporadic, spotty conditions of tropical weather on the eastern side of this, Jordan, are going to likely persist through Wednesday morning. So they want to get this building down as quickly as possible. And Jordan, speaking with the mayor here of Surfside, Florida, just about an hour ago, we talked to him, and he was saying that this is likely going to happen this afternoon, because the sooner it comes down, the sooner they can resume the search for those 121 missing souls in this building. Of course, the hope is, Jordan, they find at least a few of them still alive, though hope is waning.
Yeah,
Jordan,
I mean, everyone's thoughts and prayers going out to those folks out there to try to do that as fast as can. Justin, thank you for the update. We really appreciate it. We'll catch up with you in just a moment. But, anytime we have, big natural disaster, or I'm just thinking of the season we're in, big forest fires, you hope that Mother Nature can help in some way with timing, but unfortunately that's not always the case. Now, watching Elsa closely, if it stays farther to the left, maybe it can help Miami a little bit, but if it decides to take more of a right track and stays on the right side of that cone, unfortunately, it looks like Miami could be, feeling more of the impact. So when we take a look at Miami's forecast, notice we've got the showers and storms that are in our forecast. And one thing to note is going to be these wind speeds here. That's going to be, these are going to be, this is a look at where we could see consistent, sustained winds. The gusts are likely to be higher than that. And if we just take a look at precipitation, as of today, we know that this could change, but it does look like Miami could stay on that eastern side, and we'll wait for Elsa to get closer to cross over to the Keys to see some of these outer bands kind of work their way back up on the southeast side of Florida here. So we know this thing's going to impact Florida. Hopefully, folks in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton can maybe, dodge a bullet here and we keep that system out to the south and the west, but it does look like it's going to be very, very close by. Okay, real quick, Naples, here's your forecast. Once again, looks like it'll be a little bit breezier for you, trying to give you guys an idea, city-specific, Carl, what people can experience. Now, if they're, let's say, Tampa, even let's Apalachicola on that western side, do any of these communities need to worry about storm surge at all?
Well, that's a very storm surge prone region because of the continental shelf. So there's always some concern there. And that's really highly dependent on just how strong the storm gets. Right now, it is forecast to be a mid-grade tropical storm. It is possible that it gets stronger than that. It's also possible that it's not as strong as that, and obviously that's going to bring down all of those impacts. So let's take a look at the wind potential here. And so you see the, first of all, the alerts that are in effect, tropical storm warning now in effect for the lower Keys, tropical storm watches for the upper Keys and parts of southwest Florida right now. And here is the probability of tropical storm force winds. Now, this product is based on the current forecast from the National Hurricane Center. So this is assuming a 60-mile-per-hour storm. And these probabilities are going to come up, by the way, as the storm gets closer. That's why they're so high in this vicinity. But you get the general idea. They're coming into the Keys. That's going to be late tomorrow. And then coming into the west coast of Florida beyond that. There's a look at when to expect these winds. So Monday morning, they're starting to come off the north coast of Cuba, likely coming into the Keys during the day. On Monday, the second half of the day, most likely, and then coming up the southwest coast of Florida into Tuesday morning, very late Monday night and into Tuesday morning. But again, this is all really dependent on the structure of the storm. And so here's the latest wind gust forecast from the American model, which is not as aggressive about the structure and intensity of the storm as it was yesterday. Really, in general, the models have been trending downward in terms of the maximum intensity, but it still does show some pretty strong wind in Key West, developing Monday night, continuing all night long, going into Tuesday morning. You've still got strong winds there. Winds picking up in southwest Florida, Naples, Sanibel Island, coming into Tampa, and winds going through the day on Tuesday there in the Tampa area. And again, the intensity forecast is really tricky in this case. And so let's say everything goes right, everything is optimal for the storm. Well, if it gets stronger, that is obviously going to amplify these readings. And the opposite is true. It's also possible that it won't be as strong and the winds won't be as strong. So there is some potential for storm surge. It's not real high, but there might be a little bit of a modest water level rise coming into the west coast there. So here's the American model. Again, not as aggressive as it was yesterday. There's the low, there's the wind and the weather on the east side, comes up into the west coast of Florida, and then continues up into the southeast beyond that. I want to show you the European model because it's been pretty consistent about this. The European model really kind of washes this thing out, does not show much of a storm, just a lot of rain coming up into Florida.
You one of the